Welcome back to Potter Paradox. If you enjoy magical twist, make sure to support the channel by liking and subscribing. Now let's divine in.
What if a Thestral carried baby Harry away before Hagrid arrived and raised him in the Death Forest? Chapter 1, The Child of the Forest. Death lingered in the crisp autumn air that Halloween night. Mortem felt it, the way Thestrals always do. The ancient creature's leathery wings beat against the night sky as he soared above the British countryside, far from his home in the Forbidden Forest. Something had pulled him here, a disturbance in the delicate balance between life and death that even the oldest of his kind rarely sensed. The skeletal black horse with dragon-like features banked sharply toward a small village. Godric's Hollow. Magic saturated this place, old magic woven into its very foundations, but tonight something had torn through that fabric. Something dark. Something unnatural. Mortem landed silently in the street, invisible to all but those who had witnessed death. His hooves made no sound on the cobblestones as he approached a partially destroyed cottage. The roof had collapsed on one side, and a sickly green haze still hung in the air, the afterglow of powerful dark magic. The Thestral's nostrils flared. Death had visited here, not once but twice. Yet something else remained, a life that should have ended but didn't. A paradox that called to him. Inside the ruined home, Mortem found the first body, a man with untidy black hair sprawled at the foot of the stairs, eyes staring without seeing. The second death waited upstairs. A woman with fiery red hair lay crumpled before a crib, her body positioned as if making a final stand. And there, standing in his crib, clutching the bars with tiny hands, was a black-haired boy no older than 15 months. Blood trickled from a lightning-shaped cut on his forehead. The child stared directly at Mortem with bright green eyes. "Ma," the boy said, looking from the Thestral to the woman on the floor. This child had witnessed death. He could see what most humans never could. But more than that, death had touched him, had struck him directly, and somehow he lived. Mortem leaned his skeletal head into the crib, nostrils flaring again. Magic swirled around the child, wild and untamed. Old magic. Blood magic. And beneath it all, a taint of something fractured and dark clinging to the wound on his forehead. The boy reached out fearlessly and placed a small hand on Mortem's muzzle. Horsey. In that moment of contact, Mortem understood. This human child would never belong in the world of wizards, not completely. Death had marked him. Changed him. The fractured piece of darkness embedded in his scar would ensure the humans feared him or used him. Neither fate seemed just for one so small who had already faced death and survived. Outside, a low rumbling sound broke the night's silence. Someone was coming. Wizards would soon arrive to claim the boy, to shape him according to their designs. Mortem made a decision that would alter the fate of the wizarding world. Gently, he clamped his teeth on the back of the child's pajamas and lifted him from the crib. The boy didn't cry out, merely grabbed onto Mortem's mane as if understanding this was his path forward. With the child secured against his bony neck, Mortem leapt from the broken window just as a massive motorcycle descended from the sky. The rider, a half-giant with wild hair, would find an empty crib and assume the worst. But Harry Potter was not dead. He clung to the Thestral's mane as they soared higher and faster than any broom, the cold night air causing him to burrow closer to Mortem's warmth-less body. Soon the lights of human settlements fell away, replaced by the vast darkness of countryside and then forest. Miles from Godric's Hollow, deep within the ancient trees of what humans called the Forbidden Forest, Mortem descended toward a clearing invisible from above. A place where the oldest and most magical of creatures gathered in times of importance. The Council Hollow. As his hooves touched the soft earth, other creatures emerged from the shadows. Centaurs with stern expressions and bows at the ready. A massive acromantula clicking its pincers thoughtfully. 3 unicorns whose horns glowed silver in the moonlight. And others, creatures so rarely seen that even wizards doubted their existence. At the center of the hollow stood an ancient oak, its trunk hollowed by age but still alive with magic. This was where the forest kept its heart, its memories, its wisdom. Mortem approached the tree and gently placed the now sleeping child in a natural cradle formed by the roots. "What have you brought among us, Deathwing?" asked Megorian, the eldest of the centaurs. His human torso was heavily muscled, his equine body the color of midnight. A silver-streaked beard fell to his chest. "A child of prophecy," Mortem replied, his voice like dry leaves rustling in autumn wind. Though he rarely spoke, all magical creatures understood him. "The stars have shifted tonight. You have seen it." "We have," confirmed another centaur, Firenze, younger with palomino coloring. "Mars burns brightly. War and death have marked this night." "The humans call him Harry Potter," Mortem continued. "He has survived that which cannot be survived." Death touched him and was reflected. The acromantula moved closer, multiple eyes gleaming. "He smells of broken soul magic," it hissed. "Dark and twisted." "Yes," Mortem acknowledged. "He carries a fragment of the one who tried to kill him. But that is not all he carries." One of the unicorns approached cautiously, lowering its horn toward the sleeping child. A soft golden glow emanated from the tip, washing over Harry. The boy smiled in his sleep, reaching up as if to touch the light. Purity, the unicorn's thoughts echoed in the hollow. Damaged but unbroken. Potential beyond measure. "The humans will search for him," rumbled a voice from the shadows. A massive bear stepped forward, but his eyes held an intelligence no ordinary bear possessed. Grimblade, last of the talking bears. "They will not surrender their chosen one." "They believe him dead," Mortem replied. "By the time they discover otherwise, he will be one of us." "And what gives you the right to make this decision, Thestral?" demanded Bane, a black-bodied centaur with a perpetual scowl. "You steal a human child and bring him to our sanctuary?" "He is no ordinary human child," Mortem said calmly. "Look to the stars you so revere, Bane. This boy's fate is woven with all of ours. The forest itself called me to him tonight." The gathered creatures fell silent, considering. It was rare for the forest to intervene so directly in the affairs of any species. Finally, the oldest centaur raised his hand. "We will consult the heavens more deeply. Until then, the child remains under our protection." He fixed Mortem with a penetrating stare. "You claim him as your charge?" "I do," said the Thestral. "I will teach him the ways of survival, of death and life in balance. I will teach him of plants and healing," offered a dryad, her bark-like skin blending with the trees around them. "The herd will show him archery and divination," Firenze added, ignoring Bane's disapproving glare. One by one, the forest dwellers offered what knowledge they could share with the human child. Even those who remained suspicious recognized the importance of the moment. If the forest had chosen this path, they would not oppose it. As the council dispersed, Mortem settled his bony body around the roots where Harry slept. The child would wake to a new world, one filled with magic unlike anything wizards knew. Whether this path would lead to salvation or destruction remained unwritten, even in the stars. Harry's first years in the forest passed in a blur of discovery. At 3, he raced through the underbrush on all fours, keeping pace with the young centaur foals. At 4, he could identify every edible plant within miles and speak the simplified language of the forest creatures. "Stay low, little shadow," Mortem instructed as they stalked through the dawnlit forest. Harry, now 5, pressed his small body against the earth, barely disturbing the fallen leaves. Ahead of them, a rabbit nibbled on clover, unaware of their presence. This was not a hunting lesson. Mortem had taught Harry early that they took only what was needed, and today they needed nothing. This was a lesson in patience, in movement, in becoming part of the forest rather than an intruder within it. Harry's wild black hair had grown long, nearly reaching his shoulders. Leaves and small twigs often tangled in the unruly mess, giving him the appearance of a forest spirit. His green eyes had grown sharper, more observant, missing nothing in their surroundings. The lightning scar on his forehead was still visible, though somewhat faded with time. The rabbit suddenly tensed, ears twitching. Harry hadn't moved, hadn't made a sound, but something had alerted the animal. In a flash of white tail, it disappeared into the undergrowth. "You did well," Mortem said. "It sensed me, not you." Harry beamed at the praise, rising to his feet in a smooth motion. He wore simple clothing fashioned by the centaurs from leather and plant fibers, durable and practical for forest life. His feet remained bare year-round, having grown tough and calloused. "Race you to the stream," he called, already darting between the trees with practiced ease. Though no human could outrun a Thestral at full gallop, Mortem always held back just enough to keep Harry pushing his limits. At the stream, Harry plunged his hands into the cold water and drank deeply before splashing his face clean. His reflection revealed a child far different from the one who would have grown up among humans, wilder, more feral in some ways, yet with an inner calm most children his age lacked. "Mortem," Harry said, suddenly serious as he often became when questions formed in his quick mind, "why don't I live with other humans?" The Thestral settled beside him at the stream's edge. This question had been inevitable. Harry encountered human wizards occasionally, mostly students from the castle who ventured into the forest's edges, but always from a distance, always in hiding. "Your story begins with death, little shadow," Mortem explained. "Your parents were killed by a dark wizard. He tried to kill you as well." Harry touched his scar instinctively. But he couldn't. No. Something happened that night, something even the wisest creatures of the forest don't fully understand. When he tried to kill you, his power broke. Some believe he died, but you don't," Harry finished, already adept at reading his guardian's subtle expressions. "Death has not claimed him completely," Mortem confirmed. "And those who followed him would seek you out if they knew you lived. The human wizards who opposed him would do the same, not to harm you, perhaps, but to shape you into what they need." Harry frowned, processing this. "And that's why you took me? To protect me?" "Partly," Mortem admitted. "But also because you belong here, in ways even you don't yet understand. The night I found you, you could see me. Why wouldn't I see you? Thestrals are visible only to those who have witnessed death and understood it. You had seen your mother die. Something in you already bridged the space between worlds." Harry nodded slowly. He'd long ago accepted that his perception differed from others. He could see the luminous spirits that sometimes drifted through the oldest parts of the forest. He could feel the shifting currents of magic in the earth beneath his feet. "Will I ever meet other humans?" he asked. "When you're ready," Mortem promised. "When you understand your own power enough to choose your path freely." Satisfied for now, Harry's serious expression melted away, replaced by childish excitement. "Can we visit the unicorn foals today? Amalthea said the newest one might be ready to meet me." Mortem nodded, and Harry scrambled onto his back, fingers gripping the Thestral's mane with practiced ease. They took to the air, skimming just above the treetops, one of Harry's favorite sensations. From above, the forbidden forest revealed its true nature. What seemed dark and imposing from the ground became a living tapestry of greens and browns, with hidden clearings like gems scattered throughout. Harry knew each one, knew the creatures that called them home, knew the safest paths between them. They landed in a sun-dappled glade where the unicorn herd often grazed. The pure white creatures raised their heads at their arrival, but showed no alarm. Harry slid from Mortem's back and approached slowly, head bowed in respect as he'd been taught. Amalthea, the lead mare, nickered softly in greeting. Beside her stood a unicorn foal so young its coat still shimmered gold rather than silver or white. It peered at Harry with curious blue eyes. Slowly, Mortem cautioned unnecessarily. Harry already knew the protocol for meeting new magical creatures, especially ones as pure and easily startled as unicorn foals. Harry sat cross-legged in the grass, making himself smaller, less threatening. He waited patiently as the golden foal's curiosity overcame its caution. Eventually, it approached, stretching its neck to sniff at Harry's wild hair. "Hello," Harry whispered, remaining perfectly still. "I'm Harry." The foal made a sound like tinkling bells and pressed its soft muzzle against Harry's cheek. A warm feeling spread through him, the natural magic of unicorns, untainted and freely given. Amalthea's voice sounded in his mind, the way it always did when the unicorns chose to communicate with him. "She says your heart is good, but shadowed. The darkness troubles her." Harry's hand went to his scar again. The unicorns had always sensed the wrongness there, the fragment of something that didn't belong. "Can it be removed?" he asked, not for the first time. "Not without great cost," came Amalthea's reply. "But my daughter sees beyond it. She sees your true spirit." As if confirming this, the foal laid its head in Harry's lap, an extraordinary sign of trust. Carefully, reverently, Harry stroked the golden mane, feeling the magic pulse beneath his fingers. From across the clearing, Mortem watched with approval. The boy's natural affinity for magical creatures continued to surpass expectations. Even those beings that typically avoided humans accepted Harry as something different, something between worlds. Later that day, as the sun began its descent, Harry and Mortem made their way to the Council Hollow for an important gathering. Today marked Harry's 5th year in the forest, and according to ancient tradition, it was time to determine his formal education. The hollow filled with representatives from every intelligent species in the forest. The centaurs came in force, led by Megorian and including even the reluctant Bane. Acromantulas sent their eldest son, Aragog himself had grown too large to move easily through the forest. Bowtruckles, fairies, and even a few goblins who maintained an outpost deep in the forest's heart arrived to observe and offer guidance. Harry stood at the center, beside the ancient oak, unafraid but solemn. He understood the importance of this council. "Harry Potter," Megorian began, using the human name they rarely spoke, "you have lived among us for 5 cycles of the seasons. You have learned our ways, our language, our magic. Now you must begin the path that will determine your role in both the forest and the wider world." The centaur gestured toward the ancient oak. "Place your hand upon the heart tree. It will help us see where your talents lie." Harry approached the massive tree. Its bark felt warm beneath his palm, alive with a slow, ancient consciousness. The moment his skin made contact, a soft golden light spread from his hand throughout the trunk, illuminating the tree from within. Murmurs of surprise rippled through the gathered creatures. The tree rarely responded so strongly to anyone. "Interesting," Megorian observed. "The forest magic flows easily through you." "Not just forest magic," Forenza added, stepping forward. "Look." The light had changed, splitting into distinct colored strands that spiraled up the trunk. Green for growing things, blue for water, red for fire, white for air, and at the center, a pulsing core of pure gold that seemed to contain and direct the others. "Elemental affinity," whispered a wood nymph. "All 5 manifestations." "And something else," Mortem said, moving to Harry's side. "Something older." A thin strand of silver had appeared, weaving through the other colors, connecting them in patterns too complex to follow. Bane stomped a hoof. "Death magic. The boy carries the touch of endings with him." "And beginnings," countered Forenza. "Silver is the color of transformation, not just endings." Harry remained still, fascinated by the lights dancing from his palm. He could feel the magic now, not just see it, different textures and temperatures flowing through him, as natural as breathing. Megorian raised his hand for silence. "The tree has shown us what we need to know. Harry Potter, your education must encompass all these aspects. You will train with each group in turn, learning what they have to teach." The council broke into discussion, creating a rotation that would give Harry exposure to every form of magic the forest contained. Centaurs would teach him astronomy and divination. The Dryads would instruct him in plant magic and healing. Water sprites would show him the magic of the forest's lakes and streams. Fire salamanders would help him understand the transformative power of flame. And Mortem, of course, would continue teaching him the balance between life and death, the most fundamental magic of all. "What about wand magic?" asked one of the goblins unexpectedly. "The boy is a wizard by birth. His human magic will manifest whether trained or not." This caused another stir. Most forest creatures regarded wand magic as limiting, a crutch humans needed because they had lost touch with more natural forms of power. "I can teach him wandless casting," offered an elderly centaur named Valerian who had once studied human magic in his youth. "The basics, at least. And I have books," added a Bowtruckle elder, to everyone's surprise. Bowtruckles rarely involved themselves in the affairs of larger beings. Human books from abandoned camps. Magic theory. Megorian nodded slowly. "Very well. The boy should understand all forms of magic available to him. When the time comes for him to choose his path, he should do so with full knowledge." As the council continued planning, Harry finally removed his hand from the tree. The lights faded, but he could still feel the different magical currents inside him, awakened by the contact. "Did you know?" he asked Mortem quietly. "I suspected," the Thestral replied. "Few creatures can see Thestrals as clearly as you do, even among those who have witnessed death. You have always straddled boundaries, little shadow." Harry considered this. "Will I ever fit anywhere completely?" "Perhaps not," Mortem admitted. "But that may be your greatest strength. A bridge between worlds often sees truths hidden from those firmly rooted on either side." The council concluded with a unanimous decision: Harry's formal magical education would begin the next day. He would rotate between teachers, spending time with each species, learning their unique magics while developing his own. By his 8th birthday, Harry moved through the forest like a shadow, silent, observant, and intimately connected to its rhythms. His magic had grown stronger and more intuitive with each passing season. "Focus," instructed Valerian, the elderly centaur who had been teaching Harry wandless magic. "Intent matters more than motion. Feel the magic gathering in your core, then direct it through your palm." Harry closed his eyes, concentrating on the fallen branch before him. He wanted it to rise, to float. The magic swirled inside him, warm and eager. "Wingardium Leviosa," he whispered, extending his hand. The branch trembled, then slowly rose from the forest floor, hovering steadily at waist height. Harry opened his eyes, grinning at his success. This spell had taken weeks to master without a wand, but now it felt almost natural. "Well done," Valerian acknowledged with a rare smile. The centaur rarely offered praise, believing it bred complacency. "Your control improves. Can I try something bigger?" Harry asked eagerly. Valerian considered this. "Very well. That fallen log, but be prepared to release the spell if the drain becomes too great." Harry turned his attention to a log nearly twice his size. Again, he gathered the magic, focusing his intent. This time, he didn't speak the incantation aloud, merely thought it while directing his energy. The massive log shuddered and slowly rose until it hovered 3 feet off the ground. Sweat beaded on Harry's forehead from the effort, but his hand remained steady. "Impressive," came a new voice from the edge of the clearing. "Most adult wizards couldn't manage that without a wand." Harry maintained his concentration as he turned to see who had spoken. A centaur mare named Calliope stood watching, her arms full of freshly gathered herbs. "Thank you," Harry replied, carefully lowering the log back to the ground. The controlled descent required even more precision than lifting it. "The council meets tonight," Calliope informed Valerian. "Megorian requests your presence, and Harry's." Valerian's expression grew serious. "Has something happened?" "Humans in the forest. More than usual, and deeper than they typically venture." Harry's interest piqued. Though he occasionally glimpsed students from the distant castle, they rarely came far enough into the forest to concern the centaurs. "What kind of humans?" he asked. Calliope gave him an appraising look. "Wizards. Looking for something, or someone." The implication hung in the air. After 8 years, had the wizarding world finally realized Harry Potter hadn't died that Halloween night? We should conclude our lesson, Valerian decided. Harry, practice the shield charm before our next session. The young boy nodded, but his mind was already racing ahead to the council meeting. Finally, a chance to learn more about the human world that had once been his. Harry spent the afternoon with the Dryads, learning to channel healing magic through the forest plants. By sunset, he made his way to the council hollow alongside Mortem, curiosity burning inside him. The hollow buzzed with unusual energy. Centaurs paced nervously, while other forest creatures spoke in hushed tones. At the center, Megorian stood with a grim expression, addressing the gathered leaders. "Third search party this month," the centaur chief was saying as Harry and Mortem arrived. "They carry instruments that detect magical signatures. They search systematically." "What do they want?" asked Grimblade, the ancient talking bear. "The castle's headmaster leads them," replied Firenze. "They speak of disturbances in their registry magic. A name has appeared that they thought lost." All eyes turned to Harry as he stepped into the clearing. At 8, he looked nothing like the humans from the castle. His body was lean and wiry from years of climbing trees and racing through the forest. His black hair fell past his shoulders, wild and untamed. The green eyes that had once matched his mother's had taken on an unusual quality. In certain lights, they seemed to glow with an inner fire. "They search for you, little shadow," Mortem said quietly. "The wizards have realized you live." Harry absorbed this without visible reaction, though inside, emotions warred. Curiosity about these people who were technically his kind. Wariness about their intentions. And beneath it all, a fierce protectiveness toward his forest home. "Will they find me?" he asked. "Not unless we allow it," Megorian assured him. "The forest shields its own. But this presents a choice earlier than we anticipated." Bane stepped forward, his expression thunderous. "There is no choice to be made. The boy remains with us. The humans abandoned their claim when they presumed him dead." "They did not abandon him," Firenze corrected. "They were misled. And Harry has human magic that needs proper training. We have trained him." Bane countered. "In our ways," Megorian said calmly. "But his path leads to both worlds, as we have always known it would." Harry listened to the debate with growing frustration. "Don't I get a say?" he finally interrupted, causing several creatures to look at him in surprise. The Harry they'd first taken in would never have spoken so boldly in council. "Of course you do, little shadow," Mortem answered before anyone else could. "This concerns your future more than anyone's." Harry turned to face the entire council. "I don't want to leave the forest. It's my home. You're my family." His voice rang clear in the hollow. "But I want to know about the other part of me too. The human part." Megorian nodded slowly. "Wisely spoken. Perhaps there is a middle path." "The school," suggested Valerian. "When he reaches the proper age, he could attend the castle school while maintaining his connection to the forest." Murmurs of consideration spread through the gathered creatures. It wasn't an unreasonable compromise. Many forest beings remembered a time when the relationship between Hogwarts and the forest had been one of mutual respect rather than wary distance. He would need preparation, Firenze pointed out. Human customs, history, context. "I can teach him what he needs to know," volunteered a surprising voice. Mozag, mate to Aragog the Acromantula, rarely spoke in council. "I was raised by a wizard before joining my mate in the forest. I remember their ways." One by one, the council members offered what knowledge they had of the human world, fragmented and sometimes outdated, but better than nothing. Harry would spend the next 3 years learning not just magic but human customs, language patterns, and social expectations. "And when will they know of him?" asked Bane, still skeptical. "When his letter comes," Megorian decided. "The magic that writes those letters cannot be fooled or denied. It will find him here, as it finds all magical children when they turn 11. The council concluded with this plan in place. Harry would continue his forest education while preparing for eventual contact with the wizarding world. He would be a bridge between worlds, the first in generations. As the gathering dispersed, Harry walked with Mortem to their favorite night perch, a cliff overlooking the distant lights of Hogwarts Castle. Though he'd seen it countless times, tonight the ancient structure seemed to call to him in a new way. "Are you afraid?" Mortem asked, sensing Harry's contemplative mood. "Not afraid," Harry replied after a moment. "Just uncertain. Will they accept me as I am? I'm not like them." "No, you're not," Mortem agreed. "You're more. You carry the wisdom of the forest alongside your human heritage. Some will fear that difference, but others will recognize its value." Harry nodded, then asked the question that truly worried him. "Will I still be able to see you? If I go among humans who haven't seen death?" Mortem pressed his skeletal head against Harry's shoulder in a rare display of physical affection. "I will always be visible to you, little shadow. The connection we share goes beyond sight." Reassured, Harry watched the distant castle lights until they blurred with unshed tears. Not tears of sadness, but of determination. Whatever came next, he would face it on his own terms, wild, free, and unbound by the limitations of either world. The next 3 years passed in intensive preparation. While continuing his magical training with various forest creatures, Harry now spent additional time learning about human society. Mozag the Acromantula proved surprisingly knowledgeable about wizard customs, having spent her early years in the care of a pure-blood family before escaping to the forest. She taught Harry proper table manners, wizarding etiquette, and how to wear human clothing comfortably. "No, no," she clicked her mandibles in disapproval as Harry fumbled with the buttons of a shirt they'd salvaged from an abandoned campsite. "The small holes receive the buttons, not the other way around." Harry sighed in frustration. Why do humans make clothing so complicated? Leather and plant fibers work perfectly fine. Appearances matter greatly to humans, Mozag explained patiently. Particularly to wizards. Your forest-made clothing would mark you as an outsider immediately. Eventually, Harry mastered the basics of human attire, though he still preferred his forest garments when among his own kind. The wood nymphs taught him to moderate his speech patterns. Years of communicating with various forest creatures had given Harry an unusual cadence and vocabulary. He needed to learn how to speak like a human child his age. Less formal with friends, instructed Willow, a young nymph who had occasional contact with human children. More casual. Humans your age use contractions and slang. "I'll try," Harry said, deliberately using the contraction. "This is hard, this sucks." Willow giggled at his attempt. "Better. But don't force it. Listen more than you speak at first." Even the centaurs, who generally disdained human affairs, contributed to Harry's education. They taught him wizard history from their unique perspective, highlighting the complex and often troubled relationship between magical creatures and wand carriers. "Humans record history as a straight line," explained Forenza during one lesson. "Events following events, causes leading to effects. But true history is like the stars, interconnected, cyclical, with patterns that repeat across centuries." Harry absorbed these lessons eagerly, creating a mental map of wizarding society that was far more nuanced than what most wizard-raised children received. He understood the prejudices, the power structures, and the blind spots that defined much of magical Britain. All the while, his magical abilities continued to develop in extraordinary ways. By his 10th birthday, Harry could communicate with nearly every intelligent creature in the forest, control the elements with subtle precision, and perform most basic wizarding spells without a wand. His most unusual ability, however, remained his connection to death magic, the silver thread the heart tree had revealed years earlier. Under Mortem's guidance, Harry learned to sense the boundaries between life and death, to feel when a creature's time was ending naturally versus when something had disrupted the normal flow. "All things die," Mortem would remind him. Death is not evil, merely necessary. What matters is understanding its proper place in the cycle. This philosophy shaped Harry's developing worldview. Unlike most children his age, he held no fear of death itself, only of needless suffering or lives cut unnaturally short. One crisp autumn morning, just months before his 11th birthday, Harry sat cross-legged at the edge of a small pond, practicing water manipulation. With careful concentration, he coaxed the surface into forming shapes, first simple geometries, then more complex forms like animals and trees. "Your control improves daily," observed Mortem, watching from nearby. Harry smiled without breaking his concentration. A miniature dragon of water now flew in circles above the pond's surface. "I've been practicing with all 5 elements. They each feel different: water flows, fire jumps, earth anchors, air swirls, and the gold one. Spirit magic," Mortem supplied. "The force that connects all other elements." "Right. That one's hardest to explain. It just is." Their conversation halted as both sensed a presence approaching, something foreign to the forest. Harry released his water dragon, letting it splash back into the pond as he rose to his feet. A snowy owl swooped into the clearing, circling once before landing on a nearby branch. In its beak was a thick envelope of yellowish parchment. "It's time," Mortem said simply. With a racing heart, Harry approached the owl. The bird studied him with intelligent amber eyes before extending its leg, to which the letter was now attached. Harry carefully untied the envelope and examined it. Addressed in emerald green ink was, "Mr. H. Potter, the Heart Tree Hollow, Forbidden Forest, Scotland." The precise address sent a chill down Harry's spine. The magic that directed these letters knew exactly where to find him. With slightly trembling fingers, he broke the wax seal bearing an elaborate coat of arms and unfolded the parchment within. "Hogwarts School of Witchcraft and Wizardry Headmaster, Albus Dumbledore, Order of Merlin, First Class, Grand Source, CHF. Warlock, Supreme Mugwump, International Confide, of Wizards. Dear Mr. Potter, we are pleased to inform you that you have been accepted at Hogwarts School of Witchcraft and Wizardry. Please find enclosed a list of all necessary books and equipment. Term begins on September 1st. We await your owl by no later than July 31st. Yours sincerely, Minerva McGonagall, Deputy Headmistress." A second page listed required supplies, robes, books, a wand, a cauldron, and other items Harry had only heard about from Mozag and the other creatures familiar with wizard customs. The owl remained perched on the branch, clearly waiting for a response. "What will you do?" Mortem asked, though he already knew the answer. They had prepared for this moment for 3 years. Harry took a deep breath. "I'll go. I'll learn what they have to teach. But I won't forget who I am or where I belong." From a pouch at his waist, he withdrew a piece of parchment salvaged from an old book and a charcoal stick he used for drawing. In careful letters, the centaurs had insisted he learn proper penmanship. He wrote, "Deputy Headmistress McGonagall, I accept my place at Hogwarts School. However, I will require assistance with obtaining my school supplies as I have special circumstances. Respectfully, Harry Potter." He deliberately kept it vague. The full explanation of his upbringing would require more than a brief note. After tying the response to the owl's leg, Harry watched the bird disappear into the sky, carrying his message toward the castle visible in the distance. The first bridge between his worlds had been established. "The council should be informed," Mortem said. "They will want to discuss how this proceeds." Harry nodded, but his eyes remained fixed on the distant castle. After years of preparation and anticipation, the moment had finally arrived. Soon he would walk among humans, among wizards, for the first time since he was a baby. "Do you think they'll send someone right away?" he asked. "I expect so," Mortem replied. "Your response will raise questions they've waited a decade to answer." Harry's hand drifted to his lightning scar, the mark that connected him to the human world and its conflicts. "I'm ready," he said with quiet determination. "Whatever comes next, I'm ready." 2 days after Harry sent his reply, Mortem detected a human presence entering the forest from the direction of the castle. Not students this time, the forest was nearly empty of them during summer months, but a single large figure moving with purpose along one of the main paths. Someone comes, the Thestral informed Harry, who was practicing archery with a young centaur named Ronan. A half-giant. He follows your owl's trail. Harry lowered his bow, excitement and apprehension mingling in his chest. Hagrid, he said, recalling the name from Mortem's stories of the night his parents died. The gamekeeper. You remember well, Mortem approved. He was sent to retrieve you that night. Now he comes again, though for different purpose. Harry handed his bow to Ronan. I should meet him. But not alone. Never alone, Mortem agreed. The forest stands with you. They made their way toward the approaching human, keeping to the shadows. Other forest creatures melted into the trees around them, visible only to those who knew where to look. The centaurs had positioned scouts along the half-giant's path, reporting his progress through subtle bird calls that Harry understood as clearly as spoken words. Finally, they reached a position ahead of the visitor. Harry climbed a large oak tree, settling on a branch 20 feet above the path. Mortem took to the air, circling silently overhead. From this vantage point, they waited. Minutes later, the massive form of Rubeus Hagrid came into view. Nearly 12 feet tall with a wild beard and gentle eyes, he moved with surprising care through the forest, obviously familiar with its paths. Hello. Hagrid called out, voice booming through the trees. Harry Potter. Yeah, in here, lad. Professor Dumbledore sent me to help ya with your school things. From his perch, Harry observed the half-giant carefully. There was no deception in the man's open face, no hidden agenda in his straightforward manner. After a moment's consideration, Harry made his decision. In one fluid motion, he dropped from the branch, landing silently on the path 10 feet ahead of Hagrid. The gamekeeper startled, nearly dropping the pink umbrella he carried. Blimey, he exclaimed, then froze as he took in the sight before him. Harry knew what Hagrid saw, a small but wiry boy with wild black hair reaching his shoulders, dressed in simple leather garments, barefoot despite the forest floor's roughness. A boy whose lightning scar was partially visible beneath his unruly fringe, whose green eyes held a wisdom and wildness no ordinary child possessed. Hello, Hagrid, Harry said calmly. I've been expecting you. The half-giant's mouth opened and closed several times before he found words. Harry. Harry Potter. Is that really you? It is, Harry confirmed. But how? Everyone thought, we all believed. Hagrid's eyes welled with tears. You've been alive all this time? Here in the forest? Harry nodded. The forest has been my home since the night my parents died. But who? How did ya? Hagrid seemed unable to complete a thought, overwhelmed by emotion and confusion. A soft rustle of wings announced Mortem's arrival as the Thestral landed beside Harry. Hagrid's eyes widened further. A Thestral, he exclaimed. The oldest by the look of him. Has he been? Mortem rescued me that night, Harry explained, placing a hand on the Thestral's bony neck. He brought me here, to the forest. He and the other creatures have raised me. Hagrid stared in astonishment, then suddenly dropped to one knee, bringing his face closer to Harry's level. I don't believe it, he whispered, voice choked with emotion. All these years. Professor Dumbledore never gave up hope, you know. When your name appeared in the book, he knew, but none of us imagined. The book? Harry prompted. The Hogwarts registry, Hagrid explained, collecting himself somewhat. Magical Quill writes down the name of every magical child when they're born. When they turn 11, if they're still alive, their letter gets sent. Yours disappeared after that night. Everyone thought you'd died with your parents. But then, few months back, your name reappeared. Professor Dumbledore's been Seer Chin, the forest ever since. Harry nodded thoughtfully. This aligned with what the centaurs had observed. "And now you've come to take me shopping for school supplies?" he asked, amusement touching his voice at the mundanity of it. Hagrid gave a watery chuckle. "That's right. Though I reckon Professor Dumbledore will have a few more questions when we get back." "I imagine he will," Harry agreed. "As do I." Hagrid stood again, seeming to finally process the full situation. "Raised by creatures in the Forbidden Forest," he murmured. "Wait till everyone hears. Harry Potter, alive and wild as the forest itself." "I'd prefer if everyone didn't hear just yet," Harry said firmly. "My life here has been peaceful because it's been private." Hagrid looked abashed. Course. Not my story to tell anyway. But Professor Dumbledore will need to know." "I'll speak with him," Harry agreed. "After we get my supplies. I've never been shopping before." This simple statement seemed to hit Hagrid hard. "Never been, right then. We've got lots to do today. Diagon Alley's the place for all your school things." Harry turned to Mortem. "Will you come?" The Thestral shook his head. "The human world is not ready for such a sight. I will await your return at the forest's edge." Hagrid watched this exchange with fascination. "Ye can understand him? Communicate with him?" "With most forest creatures," Harry confirmed. "It's one of the first things I learned." "Remarkable," Hagrid breathed. "Absolutely remarkable. Yeah, no, I've always had a way with magical creatures myself, but nothing like that." Harry smiled, warming to the half-giant's genuine enthusiasm and obvious love for magical beings. "Perhaps you can tell me about the creatures you care for at Hogwarts. Mortem says you're the gamekeeper." "That I am." Hagrid beamed. "Got all sorts of interesting creatures round the grounds. Would be happy to introduce ya." As they began walking back toward the castle grounds, Harry felt the eyes of the forest following them, centaurs, acromantulas, bowtruckles, and others, all watching this first step into the human world with mixed emotions. For Harry, it was the beginning of a new chapter, one that would bridge his forest upbringing with his wizard heritage. The path ahead was uncertain, but he faced it with the confidence of one who had learned from the wisest creatures of the forest and carried their strength within him. Diagon Alley exploded around Harry in a sensory overload of colors, sounds, and smells unlike anything he'd experienced in the forest. Buildings leaned at impossible angles, people hurried in every direction wearing bright robes, and shop windows displayed items that twisted, sparkled, and sometimes shouted for attention. "Bit overwhelming, ain't it?" Hagrid asked sympathetically, noticing Harry's wide eyes and tense posture. "Stay close. Lots to see, but we've got business first." Harry nodded, grateful for the half-giant's steady presence. They'd traveled by something called the Flu Network, a disorienting experience of green flames and spinning fireplaces that left Harry longing for Mortem's smooth flight. "First stop, Gringotts," Hagrid announced as they approached an imposing white marble building. "Wizard Bank. Run by goblins." Harry perked up at this. "Goblins? I know goblins. There's a colony in the eastern part of the forest." Hagrid looked surprised. "Is there now? Well, these might be a bit different from your forest friends. Bit more formal." Inside Gringotts, Harry immediately noticed the difference. The forest goblins lived in harmony with their surroundings, their magic focused on crafting and healing. These bank goblins carried themselves with rigid precision, their magic channeled into security and finance. Still, when Harry approached a teller and offered the traditional goblin greeting, a subtle gesture combining a head tilt and hand position, the banker's eyes widened in shock. "Where did you learn that, wizard child?" the goblin demanded, leaning forward. "From Elder Grimclaw of the Eastern Warren," Harry replied honestly. "He taught me goblin customs when I was 7. The teller studied him with new interest. "Grimclaw's Warren has had no contact with wizards for generations." "Who are you?" "Harry Potter," he answered simply. The name caused a stir among nearby goblins. Hushed conversations in gobbledygook, a language Harry partially understood from his forest lessons, spread through the hall. I see, the teller said finally. And you come to claim your vault? I have a vault? Harry asked, turning to Hagrid in confusion. Course ye do. Hagrid exclaimed. Ye didn't think your parents left ye with nothing, did ye? And I've got the key right here. He began searching through his numerous pockets. The goblin's expression soured. You possess Mr. Potter's key? By what authority? Hogwarts business, Hagrid explained, finally producing a tiny golden key. Professor Dumbledore had it all these years, keepin' it safe, see? The goblin looked unconvinced. Mr. Potter, is it your wish that this half-giant access your vault using this key? Harry sensed the tension beneath the question, an important point of goblin custom regarding ownership and consent. For today, yes, he replied carefully. But afterward, I would prefer the key remain in my possession. The goblin nodded approvingly. Very well. Griphook will take you to your vault. And perhaps, when you return, we might discuss your unusual upbringing. The underground cart ride reminded Harry pleasantly of flying with Mortem, fast, twisting, exhilarating. Hagrid, however, turned increasingly green as they plummeted deeper into the caverns. Harry's vault itself contained piles of gold, silver, and bronze coins. This is all mine? He asked in wonder. Your family's, yeah, Hagrid confirmed, still looking queasy. Not the biggest fortune, but more than enough for school and then some. Parents wanted yet taken care of. Something tightened in Harry's chest, a tangible connection to the parents he couldn't remember. He filled a pouch with coins, feeling the weight of his heritage in a new way. They made one more stop, a high-security vault where Hagrid retrieved a small, grubby package. Hogwarts business, he explained mysteriously. Very secret. Back in the marble hall, the first teller approached Harry again. Mr. Potter, Gringotts would like to verify your identity and accounts properly when you have time for a longer visit. Your unusual circumstances warrant special attention. Thank you, Harry replied. I'll return before school starts. As they left the bank, Hagrid consulted the school list. Right then. Might as well get your uniform first. Madame Malkin's is just down the way. Inside the robe shop, Harry endured his first fitting with poorly concealed impatience. The formal school robes felt restrictive after years of forest-crafted clothing. Not used to proper clothes, are you, dear? Madame Malkin asked kindly as she pinned his hem. I prefer freedom of movement, Harry explained. Don't we all, she chuckled. But traditions are traditions. Hold still now. While being fitted, Harry shared the platform with a pale, pointed-faced boy who introduced himself as Draco Malfoy. First year at Hogwarts too? The boy asked, looking Harry over with curious grey eyes. Yes, Harry replied simply, following Willow's advice to listen more than speak at first. My father's next door buying books, and mother's up the street looking at wands, Draco continued without prompting. Then I'm going to drag them off to look at racing brooms. Don't see why first years can't have their own. I think I'll bully father into getting me one and I'll smuggle it in somehow. Harry observed the boy's entitled attitude with fascination. Here was a human child who had clearly never wanted for anything, the opposite of the forest's lessons in taking only what was needed. Do you have your own broom? Draco asked. No, Harry said. I prefer flying without one. Draco laughed as if Harry had made a clever joke. Good one. Say, do you know what house you'll be in? No one really knows until they get there, but I know I'll be in Slytherin. All my family has been. I haven't decided, Harry replied truthfully. The forest creatures had explained the 4 houses, each with their own strengths and weaknesses. Haven't decided? Draco repeated incredulously. It's not really your decision, is it? Though I suppose anyone with sense would choose Slytherin over Hufflepuff, wouldn't you say? Before Harry could respond, Madame Malkin declared him finished. That's you done, my dear. Harry hopped down from the platform, oddly relieved to escape the conversation. See you at Hogwarts, he said to Draco, who still looked confused by his noncommittal answers. Outside, Hagrid waited with ice cream cones, a treat Harry had never experienced. The cold sweetness exploded on his tongue, nothing like the forest berries and honey he was accustomed to. This is amazing, he declared, licking the melting edges. Hagrid beamed. Lot o' new experiences comin' your way, Harry. Just wait till ya taste the Hogwarts feast. They continued their shopping, gathering books, potion supplies, and a cauldron. Harry approached each store with intense curiosity, asking questions that sometimes startled the shopkeepers with their insight. No, dragon liver is harvested during the waning moon for maximum potency, he corrected the apothecary owner, who stared at him in surprise. At least that's what the forest centaurs taught me. Well, I'll be. The shopkeeper muttered. The boy's right, though few brewers remember that detail nowadays. Finally, only one item remained on their list, a wand. Ollivander's is the best, Hagrid declared as they approached a narrow, shabby shop. Been making wands since ancient times. The moment Harry entered the dusty shop, he felt the magic, thousands of wands, each with its own signature, calling out in silent voices. The forest had taught him to sense magical resonance, and this room hummed with it. Good afternoon, said a soft voice. An old man with wide, pale eyes like moons appeared from between the towering shelves. I wondered when I would be seeing you, Mr. Potter. Harry met the wandmaker's gaze steadily. You knew I was alive. The wands knew, Ollivander replied cryptically. They have been, quite unsettled these past years. As if waiting. He stepped closer, examining Harry with unblinking eyes. You have your mother's eyes. But the rest of you, wild. Untamed. Interesting, very interesting. The wand-maker proceeded to measure Harry with a silver tape measure that moved on its own, all while muttering about wand materials and cores. Every Ollivander wand has a core of powerful magical substance, Mr. Potter. We use unicorn hairs, phoenix tail feathers, and dragon heartstrings. No two wands are the same, just as no two unicorns, dragons, or phoenixes are the same. Harry nodded. The wand chooses the wizard, he stated, recalling what the centaurs had taught him. Ollivander's eyebrows rose. Indeed. Most young wizards do not understand that fundamental truth. Now, let's see. What followed was a lengthy process of trying wand after wand. Each felt wrong in Harry's hand, too rigid, too flexible, too demanding, too weak. None matched the natural flow of magic he'd developed in the forest. Tricky customer, Ollivander murmured, looking more excited with each failure. Not to worry, we'll find your perfect match somewhere here. After nearly 30 wands, the old wand-maker paused, a strange expression crossing his face. I wonder, yes, why not? He disappeared into the back of the shop, returning with a dusty box. An unusual combination, holly and phoenix feather, 11 inches, nice and supple. The moment Harry grasped this wand, warmth spread up his arm. The wand's magic resonated with his own, not fighting against his wild power but channeling it, focusing it. When he gave it a wave, a stream of red and gold sparks shot from the end, illuminating the dusty shop. Curious, Ollivander murmured. Very curious. What's curious? Harry asked, still admiring how right the wand felt in his hand. I remember every wand I've ever sold, Mr. Potter. The phoenix whose tail feather resides in your wand gave another feather, just one other. It is curious that you should be destined for this wand when its brother gave you that scar. Harry's hand moved instinctively to his forehead. Voldemort's wand? Hagrid flinched at the name, but Ollivander simply nodded. The wand chooses the wizard, Mr. Potter. I think we must expect great things from you. After all, he who must not be named did great things, terrible, yes, but great. As they left the shop, Harry remained thoughtful, turning his new wand over in his hands. The connection to Voldemort was unsettling, but the wand itself felt like an extension of his magic rather than a tool for it, more natural than he'd expected from wizard magic. Their final stop was unexpected, Elop's Owl Emporium, where Hagrid insisted on buying Harry a birthday present. Every wizard needs a pet, he declared. An owl's dead useful, carries your mail and everything. Among the many birds, a snowy white owl immediately caught Harry's eye. She watched him with intelligent amber eyes, her head tilted in assessment. She's perfect, Harry said, reaching out slowly. The owl nipped his finger gently, as if confirming his choice. Unusual bird, that one, commented the shop owner. Been here ages. Too picky about owners, see. Turned down dozens of perfectly good wizards. Harry smiled, understanding the owl's selectiveness. What's her name? Whatever ye want ter call her, Hagrid said. Harry considered for a moment. Hedwig, he decided, recalling a name from one of the history books the forest creatures had saved for him. A name from history, for a dignified owl. With all purchases complete, they returned to the Leaky Cauldron, where Hagrid had arranged for Floo transport back to his cabin near the forest edge. There, Mortem waited patiently, invisible to Hagrid but a reassuring presence for Harry. Professor Dumbledore will want ter see ya, Hagrid said as they approached his hut. Should I send word you're back? Harry glanced at Mortem, then nodded. Yes, but I'd like to return to the forest first. To explain things to my family. Hagrid's eyes softened. Course, Harry. Must be a lot to take in, all this. Come by tomorrow morning. I'll let the headmaster know. Thank you, Hagrid, Harry said sincerely. For everything today. With his new possessions shrunk by Hagrid's magic for easier transport, Harry walked toward the forest line where Mortem waited. Once beyond human sight, he placed his packages carefully on the ground and climbed onto the Thestral's back. So many new things, Mortem observed as they took to the air. How was your first day among humans? Harry considered the question as they soared above the treetops. Loud. Confusing. Fascinating. He stroked his new wand thoughtfully. They know so much, yet understand so little. They've forgotten how to listen to the magic itself. And tomorrow you meet their leader, Mortem remarked. This Dumbledore who has searched for you. Yes, Harry said, his expression growing determined. I have questions for him. About my parents. About Voldemort. About why I was left on a doorstep that night. As they approached the council hollow, Harry could see creatures already gathering. News traveled quickly in the forest. Tonight would be a night of decisions and preparations. Tomorrow, Harry Potter would formally re-enter the wizarding world, not as the lost boy who lived, but as the forest's child, carrying its wisdom and wild magic with him. Chapter 2, Two Worlds Collide. Albus Dumbledore couldn't stop pacing. His long silver beard swished back and forth as he moved from his desk to the window of the headmaster's office, pausing every few moments to glance at the door. The portraits of previous headmasters watched with unusual interest, whispering among themselves. He should have returned by now, Dumbledore muttered, checking a peculiar watch with 12 hands and tiny planets instead of numbers. Professor McGonagall sat primly in a chair, her back straight as a ruler. Patience, Albus. Hagrid is nothing if not thorough. If the boy truly is in the forest, the door burst open with such force that several delicate silver instruments rattled on their shelves. Hagrid filled the doorway, his wild beard unable to hide his enormous grin. Found him. Hagrid announced triumphantly. Found Harry Potter. Dumbledore froze mid-step. McGonagall's hand flew to her mouth. He's alive. Truly alive? Dumbledore asked, his voice barely above a whisper. Alive and kicking. Hagrid confirmed, squeezing himself through the doorway. And not just alive, thriving. Never seen anything like it, professors. The boy's been living in the Forbidden Forest all these years. McGonagall's eyebrows shot toward her hairline. The Forbidden Forest? That's impossible. No child could survive, not alone, he couldn't, Hagrid agreed, dropping into a specially reinforced chair that still creaked ominously under his weight. But he wasn't alone. Ya won't believe this, he was rescued and raised by a Thestral. Silence fell over the office. Even the portraits stopped whispering. A Thestral, Dumbledore repeated slowly, returning to his desk chair. Most extraordinary. And he told you this himself? Harry can speak. Speak? Professor, he talks better than most grown wizards I know. Bit odd way of putting things sometimes, but smart as a whip. Understands Thestrals too, communicates with all sorts of creatures, he says. Dumbledore leaned forward, his blue eyes intensely focused. Tell me everything, Hagrid. From the beginning. Hagrid described finding Harry, a small but confident boy who moved through the forest like a shadow, who greeted him by name before Hagrid even spotted him, who introduced the ancient Thestral named Mortem as casually as one might introduce a pet dog. And he came with you to Diagon Alley? McGonagall asked, still looking stunned. Right away. Curious about everything, he was. Asked the smartest questions, noticed things most kids wouldn't. Made friends with the goblins, if ya can believe it. Knew some special goblin greeting that had them falling over themselves. And his scar? Dumbledore asked quietly. Still there. Bit faded maybe, but right where it should be. Dumbledore steepled his fingers, his expression thoughtful. Where is Harry now? Back in the forest, Hagrid said. Wanted to explain things to his, well, he called them his family. The forest creatures. Said he'd come see ya tomorrow morning. He agreed to attend Hogwarts. McGonagall asked. Oh yeah. Excited about it, I'd say, though hard to read him sometimes. Has this calm way about him, like nothing could surprise him much. But his eyes, sharp and curious, taking everything in. Dumbledore rose again, moving to the window that overlooked the Forbidden Forest. 10 years, he murmured. 10 years we believed him dead, while he grew wild and free just beyond our borders. He turned back to Hagrid. Did he seem happy? Hagrid smiled. Happier than any kid I've ever met, Professor. Not the loud, bouncy kind of happy. More like, content. Like he knows exactly who he is and where he belongs. Well, McGonagall said briskly, though her voice held a slight tremor, this certainly changes things. The boy will need special accommodations, special consideration. After such an unusual upbringing, I suspect, Dumbledore interrupted gently, that Harry Potter may surprise us all with his adaptability. But yes, Minerva, we will need to be flexible. He turned back to Hagrid. Tomorrow, then. We shall welcome the boy who lived back to the world from which he disappeared. Harry woke before dawn in his favorite sleeping spot, a hollow high in an ancient oak tree, cushioned with soft mosses. Hedwig perched nearby, having adapted immediately to forest life. The snowy owl hooted softly as she noticed him stirring. Morning to you too, Harry said, stretching. Today was the day he would meet the Hogwarts headmaster, the wizard who had searched for him, who had known his parents, who might have answers to the questions that had grown within him since learning of his history. Harry gathered his things, the wand now tucked into a leather sheath strapped to his forearm, a small pouch of wizarding money, and the Hogwarts letter. He wore his forest clothing rather than the new wizarding robes. If Dumbledore wanted to know who Harry Potter had become, he would see the truth from the start. Mortem waited at the base of the tree, skeletal head raised expectantly. Ready? The Thestral asked. As I'll ever be, Harry replied, sliding down the trunk with practiced ease. He landed lightly beside his guardian, patting the bony neck affectionately. The council had debated long into the previous night. Some, like Bane, argued that Harry should demand to continue living in the forest while attending school. Others, like Firenze, suggested he embrace the human experience fully to better understand both worlds. In the end, they agreed that Harry must chart his own path forward, with the forest always open to him regardless of his choices. The centaurs read troubling signs in the stars last night, Mortem said as they walked toward the forest edge. Change approaches. Conflict. Harry nodded. The darkness in my scar. They believe it's stirring. They believe many things, Mortem replied neutrally. But yes, that fragment of broken soul magic concerns them. The castle may hold answers, or greater dangers. They reached the tree line overlooking Hagrid's hut just as the first rays of sunlight crested the distant mountains. Smoke curled invitingly from the chimney. This is where I leave you, Mortem said. The half-giant cannot see me, and the castle grounds are too exposed for comfort. Harry placed a hand on Mortem's neck. I'll return tonight to tell you everything. Remember who you are, little shadow, Mortem said, pressing his skeletal head against Harry's shoulder. No matter what truths you learn today. With that, the Thestral melted back into the forest's shadows, leaving Harry alone at the boundary between his worlds. Taking a deep breath, he stepped out of the trees and walked toward Hagrid's cabin. Before he even knocked, the door flew open to reveal the beaming half-giant. Harry. Right on time. Got breakfast ready if you're hungry. The cabin's interior was cluttered but cozy, with hams and pheasants hanging from the ceiling, a copper kettle boiling on the fire, and a massive hound drooling on a patchwork quilt. The dog, Fong, Hagrid called him, approached Harry cautiously, then became instantly submissive when Harry made a soft sound in his throat. Well, would ya look at that, Hagrid said admiringly. Took me weeks to get Fong to trust me that much. Harry shrugged. Dogs are simple. They respond to confidence and kindness. Breakfast consisted of rock cakes, which lived up to their name, and strong tea. Harry ate politely, having learned from the forest creatures that sharing food created important bonds between different species. Professor Dumbledore's waiting in his office, Hagrid explained between bites. Couldn't believe it when I told him about ya. None of them could. They thought I died with my parents, Harry said matter-of-factly. That's right. Terrible night, that was. Hagrid's eyes grew misty. I was there, you know. After it happened. Pulled ya from the ruins myself, or thought I did. Must have just missed Mortem. Harry leaned forward. You were there. Did you see what happened? Hagrid shook his head. Got there after you know who had gone. House was half destroyed. Found your dad first, his voice caught. Then your mum. Then I found what I thought was you, wrapped ya up, and was about to take ya away when Professor Dumbledore and Professor McGonagall arrived. That's when we realized. That I was already gone, Harry finished. Just a transfigured doll, it was. Clever bit of magic, looked just like a baby. We thought you know who had done something terrible. Took it back to Hogwarts. By morning, it had turned back into a stick. Hagrid wiped his eyes with a tablecloth-sized handkerchief. Broke all our hearts, it did. Thought we'd lost the lot of ya. Harry absorbed this information silently. The transfigured doll explained why the wizards believed him dead. But who had created it? Mortem possessed many unusual abilities, but transfiguration wasn't among them. We should head up to the castle, Hagrid said, checking a pocket watch the size of a saucer. Professor Dumbledore will be waiting. The walk to Hogwarts gave Harry his first proper look at the castle in daylight. He'd glimpsed it from a distance many times, but never approached this closely. The ancient structure loomed against the morning sky, towers and turrets reaching upward like stone trees. Magic thrummed from its very foundations, old magic, layered and complex. Students stared as Hagrid led Harry through the entrance hall and up moving staircases. Harry heard whispers following in their wake. "Who's that with Hagrid? Is that a new student? Term hasn't started yet. What's he wearing? Looks like animal skins." Harry ignored them, focusing instead on the castle itself. Portraits moved and spoke, suits of armor creaked and shifted, and ghosts drifted through walls. The magic here felt different from the forest, more structured, more contained, but powerful nonetheless. They stopped before a large stone gargoyle. "Chocolate frog," Hagrid said, and the gargoyle sprang aside to reveal a spiral staircase. "It responds to candy names?" Harry asked, amused. Hagrid chuckled. "Professor Dumbledore has a sweet tooth. Changes the password regular, always to some treat or other." The moving spiral staircase deposited them before an oak door with a brass knocker. Before Hagrid could use it, a voice from within called, "Enter." Dumbledore's office astounded even Harry, who had grown up surrounded by magical wonders. Silver instruments puffed and whirred on spindly tables. Hundreds of books lined the walls. Portraits of elderly witches and wizards watched from gilded frames. A magnificent red and gold bird perched beside the desk, regarding Harry with intelligent black eyes. And behind the desk sat Albus Dumbledore himself, tall, thin, and ancient, with silver hair and beard long enough to tuck into his belt. Half-moon spectacles rested on a crooked nose, and behind them, piercing blue eyes studied Harry with undisguised wonder. "Harry Potter," Dumbledore said softly, rising from his chair. At last. Harry met the headmaster's gaze steadily. "Professor Dumbledore." "Thank you, Hagrid," Dumbledore said, not taking his eyes off Harry. "Would you mind giving us some time alone?" After Hagrid departed, Dumbledore gestured to a chair. "Please, sit. Would you care for a lemon drop?" Harry sat but declined the candy. Up close, he could sense the magical power emanating from the old wizard, carefully controlled but immense, like a banked forest fire. "I must say," Dumbledore began, reclaiming his own seat, "finding you alive is the most pleasant surprise I've had in many years. And in such extraordinary circumstances. Being raised by forest creatures isn't standard for wizards, I take it?" Harry asked with the hint of a smile. Dumbledore's eyes twinkled. "I dare say you're the first in recorded history. Though perhaps not the first ever, many old tales speak of children raised by magical beings. Like Romulus and Remus with the wolf," Harry nodded. "The centaurs taught me those stories." "Ah, the centaurs," Dumbledore leaned forward slightly. "They participated in your upbringing as well?" "Everyone did," Harry explained. "The Thestral mortem found me first, but I learned from all the forest creatures, centaurs, unicorns, even acromantulas. Each taught me different magic, different ways of seeing the world." "Extraordinary," Dumbledore murmured. "And clearly they taught you well. You speak articulately, you carry yourself with confidence, and Hagrid tells me you demonstrated remarkable magical sensitivity in Diagon Alley." Harry shrugged. "I've been using magic since I was little. Not wizard magic with wands and specific spells, but feeling the natural magic in everything." "I'd very much like to hear about that," Dumbledore said. "But first, I owe you an explanation about that night, about how you came to be in a position where a Thestral could find you." For the next hour, Dumbledore spoke of Voldemort's rise to power, the prophecy that marked Harry before birth, his parents' murder, and the mystery of how baby Harry had survived the killing curse. He explained his original plan to place Harry with his mother's sister for protection, a plan thwarted by Mortem's intervention. "So my aunt and uncle never even knew I existed?" Harry asked. "They knew of you, but never met you," Dumbledore confirmed. "After we discovered what we thought was your body, I informed them that both you and your parents had perished. I believe they were, not displeased with that news." Harry nodded, unsurprised. The forest creatures had gathered information about his mother's family over the years. Their distaste for magic was well known. "And the protection my mother created, her sacrifice, it lives in my blood?" Harry asked, touching his scar. Yes. Ancient magic, powerful beyond measure. Love manifest as magical protection. Dumbledore's eyes grew distant. I had hoped to extend that protection through your blood connection to your aunt, but perhaps the forest provided better protection still. It did, Harry said confidently. No one who meant me harm could find me there. The forest itself shields those it claims as its own. Dumbledore nodded slowly. That brings us to the present, and future. You've accepted your place at Hogwarts, but I wonder, what are your expectations? What do you hope to learn here? Harry considered the question carefully. I want to understand wizard magic, how it's different from and similar to what I already know. I want to learn about my parents and the world they came from. He paused, then added more quietly, and I want to understand why part of Voldemort lives in my scar. Dumbledore's eyebrows rose sharply. You know about that? The unicorn sensed it first, Harry explained. Something dark, broken, not belonging. The Acromantulas called it, broken soul magic. I can feel it sometimes, like a shadow at the edge of my vision. Dumbledore stared at Harry with new intensity. The magical creatures not only recognized the fragment but told you about it. Most extraordinary. Even I was not entirely certain until, he stopped abruptly. Until when? Harry prompted. Until this very conversation, Dumbledore finished smoothly, though Harry sensed he'd changed what he intended to say. Your awareness of it confirms my suspicions. We will need to address this situation, eventually. But not immediately. Harry frowned slightly but didn't press the issue. The forest had taught him patience in seeking important truths. Now, Dumbledore continued, we must discuss practical matters. Term begins in 1 week. Normally, first-year students arrive by train on September 1st, but in your case, we might make an exception if you prefer to. I want to take the train, Harry interrupted. I want the full experience, including meeting other students before we arrive. Dumbledore smiled. Very well. Where will you stay until then? You're welcome to remain at Hogwarts, of course. The forest is my home, Harry said simply. I'll stay there until term begins. I see. And during term? Students typically live in dormitories within their house. I understand. I'll follow the same rules as everyone else, Harry assured him. Though I may visit the forest occasionally. Dumbledore nodded. That seems reasonable. The sorting ceremony will determine your house on arrival. The sorting hat takes into account both your innate qualities and your preferences, should you have any. I'll let the hat decide, Harry said. The forest creatures had explained the 4 houses, each with strengths and weaknesses. None seemed obviously superior to the others in his mind. One last thing, Dumbledore said, his tone growing serious. Your return will cause quite a stir in the wizarding world. The boy who lived, returned from the dead, it will be front-page news. Are you prepared for that attention? Harry frowned. I'd prefer privacy, but I understand that's unlikely. I just don't want people intruding on the forest trying to find me. I will do what I can to minimize the disruption, Dumbledore promised. Though I fear some sensation is inevitable. Their meeting concluded with practical details, where to find platform 9 3/4, what books to read before term began, and an offer from Professor McGonagall to answer any additional questions about classes. As Harry stood to leave, the magnificent bird on the perch trilled softly and flew to land on the back of his chair. Fawkes seems quite taken with you, Dumbledore observed with interest. He rarely approaches strangers so boldly. He's a phoenix, Harry said, carefully extending a hand toward the brilliant red and gold plumage. I've never met one before. Fawkes leaned into Harry's touch, making a sound like distant bells. His tail feather is in your wand, Dumbledore said quietly. Ollivander wrote to tell me immediately after your purchase. Harry looked up in surprise. This phoenix? Specifically? The very same. Fawkes has only ever given 2 feathers for wand making. You hold one. Lord Voldemort holds the other. The phoenix trilled again, pressing his head more firmly against Harry's palm. A warm sensation flowed between them, neither approval nor disapproval, but acknowledgement, recognition. He doesn't seem bothered by the connection, Harry observed. Phoenixes understand time differently than we do, Dumbledore replied cryptically. They see patterns where we see only isolated events. As Harry departed the office with Hagrid, who had waited outside, his mind buzzed with new information. The meeting had provided some answers but raised even more questions. Who had created the transfigured doll that fooled the wizards? Why had Dumbledore hesitated when discussing the fragment in Harry's scar? And what did Fawkes see when he looked at the boy carrying his feather? The week before term flew by in a whirlwind of preparation. Harry divided his time between the forest and castle grounds, speaking with professors who had known his parents and reading through his textbooks with the voracious appetite for knowledge the centaurs had instilled in him. Professor McGonagall, who taught Transfiguration, seemed particularly interested in his unusual upbringing. The theoretical implications alone are fascinating, she told him during one meeting in her office. Magical theory suggests that early exposure to different types of magic should shape one's abilities. You may find that your casting style differs significantly from your classmates. Professor Flitwick, the charms teacher, actually squeaked with excitement when Harry demonstrated his wandless levitation. Remarkable control for one so young, the tiny professor exclaimed. Most wizards never achieve such precision without a wand, even after years of training. Not all encounters were as positive. Professor Snape, the potions master, regarded Harry with cold suspicion during their brief meeting. Famous Harry Potter, he had sneered. Raised by beasts in the wilderness. We shall see if celebrity and an unconventional upbringing translate to any actual talent. The disdain in the man's voice puzzled Harry until Professor McGonagall reluctantly explained that Snape and Harry's father had been school rivals. Some grudges run deep, she'd said with disapproval. Try not to take it personally. On the morning of September 1st, Harry woke in his tree hollow for the last time until the holidays. His trunk, packed with school supplies and the few personal possessions he valued, waited at Hagrid's hut. The gamekeeper had offered to take him to King's Cross Station in London. Harry said goodbye to each of his forest families in turn, the centaur herd, the unicorns, the acromantulas, and others who had shaped his early years. Emotional farewells from magical creatures took many forms. The centaurs offered star predictions for his journey, unicorns touched his forehead with their horns in blessing, and even Aragog's children clicked their pincers in rhythmic farewell. His final goodbye was to Mortem. Our paths diverge for now, little shadow, the Thestral said as they stood at the forest edge. But they will cross again often. I'll visit whenever I can, Harry promised. And right through Hedwig. Remember all you have learned, Mortem advised. Human magic has its place and power, but don't forget the older magics. They run deeper. Harry nodded, throat tight with emotion. He placed a hand on Mortem's neck, feeling the magical connection between them, a bond that had begun that fateful Halloween night and grown stronger every day since. I wouldn't be who I am without you, he said simply. You would be someone else, Mortem agreed. Not better or worse, merely different. We all shape each other's paths. With one last embrace, Harry turned toward Hagrid's hut, where the half-giant waited with an enchanted motorcycle, their transportation to London. Ready for your big adventure? Hagrid asked cheerfully. Harry looked back at the forest once more, then nodded. Ready. Platform 9 3/4 bustled with activity, families saying goodbye, students reuniting with friends, owls hooting, cats prowling, and the massive scarlet steam engine belching clouds of white smoke. Harry absorbed the chaotic scene from beneath a simple glamour charm Professor Flitwick had taught him, not enough to completely change his appearance, just to make his features less recognizable at first glance. No sense causing a stampede before you even board the train, Hagrid had said wisely. After helping Harry find an empty compartment and stow his trunk, Hagrid gave him a crushing hug. Your parents would be so proud, the giant whispered, eyes suspiciously bright. So am I. As the train pulled away from the platform, Harry settled by the window, watching London give way to countryside. The glamour charm would fade within the hour, long enough to let him observe his future classmates without immediate recognition. He didn't wait long for company. The compartment door slid open to reveal a tall, gangly boy with fiery red hair and a smudge on his nose. Anyone sitting there? The boy asked, pointing to the seat opposite Harry. Everywhere else is full. Help yourself, Harry replied. The boy stowed his trunk and sat down. I'm Ron, by the way. Ron Weasley. Harry, he responded simply, curious how long it would take for recognition to dawn. Nice to meet you. Ron glanced curiously at Harry's clothing. He wore his school robes over forest-made leather garments, an unusual combination. First year too? Harry nodded. Same here. All my brothers have been through Hogwarts already, I'm the sixth in our family to go. You could say I've got a lot to live up to. Ron grimaced. Everyone expects me to do as well as the others, but if I do, it's no big deal because they did it first. Harry tilted his head, studying the redhead with interest. You want to stand out, be different from them? Well, yeah. Wouldn't you? I've never had siblings, Harry said thoughtfully. In the forest, everyone is unique. No two creatures follow the same path. Ron blinked. The forest? What forest? Before Harry could respond, the compartment door slid open again. A round-faced boy looked in tearfully. Sorry, he said, but have you seen a toad at all? Both boys shook their heads, and the round-faced boy wailed, I've lost him. He keeps getting away from me. He'll turn up, said Harry. Animals rarely stray far from those they consider family. The boy looked doubtful but thanked them and left. Don't know why he's so bothered, said Ron. If I'd brought a toad I'd lose it as quick as I could. Mind you, I brought Scabbers, so I can't talk. He pulled a fat grey rat from his pocket. He's useless, hardly ever wakes up. Harry's eyes narrowed slightly as he studied the rat. Something felt off about the creature, a magical signature that didn't match what a rat should have. He's very old, Harry observed. Ancient, Ron agreed. Been in the family for ages. Used to be my brother Percy's. Their conversation continued as the train carried them northward. Ron explained Quidditch rules, wizard suites, and the house system. Harry asked questions that made Ron look at him curiously. You don't know much about the wizard world, do you? Ron finally asked. Were your parents muggles? No, Harry said, as the glamour charm finally faded completely. They were a witch and wizard. But I didn't grow up in the wizard world. Ron's eyes widened as Harry's true features became clear, including the lightning scar on his forehead. Bloody hell, he whispered. You're Harry Potter. Yes, Harry confirmed simply. But you're supposed to be, I mean, everyone thought, Ron sputtered. Dead? Harry supplied. I know. It's a long story. Blimey. Ron stared openly. Do you remember anything? About the night when you know who? Just a flash of green light, Harry said, the rehearsed answer coming easily. He wasn't ready to share the full truth about the soul fragment with someone he'd just met. Their conversation was interrupted again, this time by a girl with bushy brown hair and large front teeth, already wearing her Hogwarts robes. The toadless boy stood behind her. Has anyone seen a toad? Neville's lost one, she said in a bossy voice. We've already told him we haven't seen it, said Ron, but the girl wasn't listening. Her eyes had fixed on Harry with sudden intensity. Are you really Harry Potter? She asked. I know all about you, of course, you're in modern magical history and the rise and fall of the dark arts and great wizarding events of the 20th century. But they all say you died with your parents. The books are wrong, Harry said with a shrug. I survived. How fascinating, the girl exclaimed, sitting down without invitation. I'm Hermione Granger, by the way. Where have you been all this time? How did no one know you were alive? Did you have to catch up on lots of studying before term? The rapid-fire questions reminded Harry of young centaurs, endlessly curious, lacking social filters. I grew up in a forest, he answered simply. With magical creatures as my family. Both Ron and Hermione stared at him with identical expressions of disbelief. You're joking, Ron said finally. I'm not, Harry replied. I was raised by a Thestral named Mortem, taught by centaurs and other forest beings. I only re-entered the wizard world a few weeks ago. But that's impossible. Hermione objected. A human child couldn't survive in a magical forest without proper care, shelter, education. I had all those things, Harry interrupted calmly. Just not in the way humans provide them. The conversation that followed was unlike any the Hogwarts Express had likely witnessed before. Hermione peppered Harry with questions about his upbringing, each answer seemingly more impossible than the last. Ron alternated between stunned silence and explosive exclamations. Neville, who had stayed to listen, looked both terrified and fascinated. You can talk to magical creatures? Hermione asked skeptically. Actually communicate with them? Most of them, Harry confirmed. Different species have different languages or communication methods, but yes. That's not a known magical ability, Hermione insisted. Except for Parseltongue, speaking to snakes, which is incredibly rare. I can speak to snakes too, Harry said with a shrug. The forest has many. Ron edged slightly away at this revelation. That's a dark magic trait, he said warily. Harry frowned. No magic is inherently dark or light. It's how you use it that matters. This philosophical statement seemed to stun his new acquaintances into momentary silence. What house do you think you'll be in? Neville asked timidly, changing the subject. I don't have a preference, Harry said honestly. Each has its strengths. This led to a discussion of house traits, with Ron firmly declaring his entire family had been in Gryffindor and Hermione wondering aloud whether Ravenclaw might suit her best. Throughout the conversation, Harry noticed that his new companions gradually relaxed, their initial shock at his unusual background giving way to curiosity and tentative friendship. The journey continued with more interruptions, a trolley selling sweets, which Harry purchased generously, eager to try wizard candy, and later, a pale boy flanked by two larger students. Harry recognized the pale boy from Madame Malkin's. Is it true? The boy asked, looking directly at Harry. They're saying all down the train that Harry Potter's in this compartment. So it's you, is it? Yes, Harry replied, studying the newcomers with interest. This is Crabbe and Goyle, the pale boy said carelessly, gesturing to his companions. And my name's Malfoy, Draco Malfoy. Ron gave a slight cough, which might have been hiding a snigger. Draco Malfoy looked at him. Think my name's funny, do you? No need to ask who you are. My father told me all the Weasleys have red hair, freckles, and more children than they can afford. He turned back to Harry. You'll soon find out some wizarding families are much better than others, Potter. You don't want to go making friends with the wrong sort. I can help you there. He extended his hand to shake Harry's, but Harry didn't take it. I judge individuals by their actions, not their families, he said quietly. In the forest, lineage matters less than personal honor. Malfoy's pale face flushed pink. I'd be careful if I were you, Potter. Unless you're a bit politer you'll go the same way as your parents. They didn't know what was good for them either. Harry stood slowly, his green eyes suddenly intense. The temperature in the compartment seemed to drop several degrees. When he spoke, his voice carried an unusual resonance. My parents died with courage and honor, protecting what they loved. How would yours face death, I wonder? Malfoy took an involuntary step backward. Are you threatening me? Not at all, Harry replied, his voice returning to normal. Just making an observation. The forest teaches that we all face our end eventually. How we live determines how we die. An uncomfortable silence fell. Even Crabbe and Goyle looked unsettled. I think you should go, Harry continued calmly. This conversation isn't productive for anyone. Surprisingly, Malfoy retreated without further comment, though his expression promised future confrontation. After they left, Ron stared at Harry with newfound respect. That was bloody brilliant. I've never seen Malfoy speechless before. That wasn't brilliant, that was scary, Neville whispered. For a second, you seemed different. Hermione studied Harry with thoughtful eyes but said nothing. The remainder of the journey passed more pleasantly. Harry shared stories of forest life that had his companions alternately amazed and disbelieving. In return, they explained aspects of wizarding culture he hadn't yet encountered. As darkness fell outside the windows, the train began to slow. An announcement informed them they would reach Hogwarts in 5 minutes. Excitement rippled through the compartment. We're really here, Hermione breathed, suddenly looking nervous despite her confident demeanor. New beginnings for all of us, Harry said with a small smile. Whatever lay ahead, he faced it not as the abandoned orphan Dumbledore had intended to place with the Dursleys, nor as the mythical boy who lived from wizard stories, but as the child of the forest, wild, wise, and ready for whatever challenges awaited. The first years crossed the lake in small boats, guided by Hagrid's booming voice and lantern light. Harry's boat carried Ron, Hermione, and Neville, all of whom fell silent as Hogwarts Castle came into view, towering against the night sky. For Harry, the approach by water revealed new aspects of the castle's magic. From the forest, he had sensed its power as a distant hum. From the lake, he felt the foundations, ancient stones laid with protections so old they had become part of the earth itself. It's alive, he murmured, trailing his fingers in the black water. What? Ron asked. The castle, Harry explained. Not conscious like you or me, but alive with magic. It feels aware. Hermione looked skeptical but intrigued. Hogwarts, a history mentions that the founders imbued the castle with certain semi-sentient qualities, but I didn't think anyone could actually sense that. Their boats reached an underground harbor, where they clambered onto rocks and pebbles. Hagrid found Neville's toad, much to the boys' relief, before leading them up a passageway to the castle's massive oak front door. Professor McGonagall met them in the entrance hall, her stern face betraying no recognition of Harry despite their previous meetings. She explained the sorting ceremony and house system before leaving them momentarily to prepare. Whispers broke out immediately among the first years. Harry Potter. The Harry Potter. I thought he was dead. Look at his scar. They say he was raised by wolves. Not wolves, you idiot, magical creatures in the Forbidden Forest. Harry ignored the whispers, focusing instead on the castle itself. Now inside its walls, he could feel the magic more clearly, layers upon layers of spells, enchantments, and protections woven together over centuries. The ghost's arrival startled many students, but Harry watched with interest as the silvery figures drifted through the wall, arguing about someone named Peeves. Their magical signature differed from living beings, cooler, less substantial, but still distinctly individual. When McGonagall returned, she led them into the great hall. Harry had seen many wondrous sights in the forest, but the enchanted ceiling showing the night sky above, thousands of floating candles, and 4 long tables filled with students created a spectacular scene. At the front of the hall, on a 4-legged stool, sat a pointed wizard's hat, patched, frayed, and extremely dirty. Harry smiled slightly, recognizing old magic when he saw it. This hat had absorbed the essence of the 4 founders themselves. The sorting hat sang its song, explaining the qualities of each house. Then Professor McGonagall began calling students forward alphabetically to try on the hat. Harry observed each sorting with interest. Hannah Abbott and Susan Bones went to Hufflepuff. Terry Boot and Mandy Brocklehurst to Ravenclaw. Lavender Brown became the first new Gryffindor. Millicent Bulstrode went to Slytherin. When Hermione's turn came, the hat took almost a full minute before shouting, Gryffindor. Ron groaned beside Harry, evidently hoping she'd go elsewhere. Neville Longbottom, the toadless boy, took even longer. When the hat finally declared, Gryffindor, Neville ran off still wearing it and had to jog back amid gales of laughter. Draco Malfoy swaggered forward and got his wish immediately. The hat had barely touched his head when it screamed, Slytherin. As the list continued toward P, whispers intensified throughout the hall. Students craned their necks, trying to spot Harry among the dwindling number of first years. Potter, Harry. Professor McGonagall finally called. The hall fell completely silent. Then, as Harry stepped forward, whispers erupted like hissing flames. Potter? Did she say Potter? The Harry Potter? I thought he was dead. Harry walked calmly to the stool and sat down. The last thing he saw before the hat dropped over his eyes was the hall full of people standing up to look at him. Then he was staring at the black inside of the hat, waiting. Said a small voice in his ear. Difficult. Very difficult. I've never seen a mind quite like yours, Mr. Potter. Raised by magical creatures, were you? Fascinating. The knowledge you possess, the magic you've already mastered, where to put you? Harry remained silent, letting the hat explore his mind. Courage, certainly, facing the unknown requires tremendous bravery. And intelligence, the centaurs taught you well. Loyalty to those you consider family, and yes, a thirst to prove yourself, to find where you truly belong. So where shall it be? Still, Harry offered no preference. No opinion, the voice sounded amused. Most unusual. You would thrive in any house, you know. Your forest upbringing has balanced qualities that most students lean heavily toward one or another. Well, if you truly have no preference, better be Gryffindor. The hat shouted the last word to the entire hall. Harry removed it and walked toward the Gryffindor table, which had erupted in wild cheering. Percy the prefect got up and shook his hand vigorously. The Weasley twins yelled, "We got Potter! We got Potter!" Harry took a seat beside Hermione, who gave him a nervous smile. From his new vantage point, he could see the high table properly. Hagrid gave him a thumbs up. Professor McGonagall managed a small, tight smile. At the center sat Albus Dumbledore, whose eyes twinkled as he nodded at Harry. And there, at the far end, sat Professor Snape, his black eyes fixed on Harry with an expression that mixed dislike with something more complex, perhaps curiosity, perhaps concern. As the sorting concluded with Ron joining Gryffindor, looking vastly relieved, Dumbledore rose to his feet. The eccentric headmaster offered only 4 words, nitwit. Blubber. Oddment. Tweak. Before the feast magically appeared on the golden plates. Harry stared at the abundance of food with wide eyes. Though never hungry in the forest, he'd eaten simply, fresh fruits, nuts, occasionally fish or small game when necessary. The rich, complex dishes before him now represented a kind of excess he'd never encountered. "Aren't you hungry?" asked Ron through a mouthful of roast potato. "Just." Deciding where to start, Harry replied, eventually taking small portions of several dishes. As they ate, conversation turned to families. Seamus Finnegan explained his mixed wizard-muggle parentage. Neville described his upbringing by his formidable grandmother. When attention inevitably turned to Harry, the table fell silent, eager to hear the truth behind the rumors. "I was rescued the night my parents died," Harry explained simply. "A Thestral, a kind of winged horse, found me and took me to the Forbidden Forest. I was raised there by various magical creatures until my Hogwarts letter arrived." Stunned silence followed this revelation. "That's impossible," said Percy Weasley finally. "The Forbidden Forest is filled with dangerous creatures. No child could survive there." The forest is dangerous to uninvited humans, Harry corrected. I was invited, accepted. The creatures became my family. But how did you learn to talk? To read and write? Hermione asked, curiosity overcoming her skepticism. Centaurs taught me language and academics. They're excellent astronomers and philosophers. Unicorns helped me understand pure magic. Acromantulas taught strategy and patience. Even the trees themselves provided lessons. Older students exchanged glances, clearly wondering if Harry was delusional or lying. But those who had spent time with him on the train, Ron, Hermione, Neville, seemed less doubtful. Is that why you can see Thestrals? Neville asked quietly. I've heard only people who've seen death can see them. Harry nodded. I saw my mother die. That's why Mortem, the Thestral who found me, knew I was special. This somber statement dampened conversation momentarily, until Fred Weasley, or perhaps George, asked brightly, so can you talk to all animals? Could you ask Mrs. Norris to stop snitching on students? Laughter broke the tension, and Harry smiled. I communicate with magical creatures, yes. But I can't control what they choose to do. The feast concluded with desserts and finally Dumbledore's start-of-term notices, a list of forbidden items, a reminder that the Forbidden Forest was off-limits to students, causing several glances toward Harry, and a strange warning about the third-floor corridor being off-limits, to everyone who does not wish to die a very painful death. He's not serious? Harry asked Percy. Must be, said Percy, frowning. It's odd, because he usually gives us a reason why we're not allowed to go somewhere. The forest's full of dangerous beasts, everyone knows that. Harry's eyes narrowed thoughtfully. What could be so dangerous that Dumbledore would store it in a school full of children? After the school song, sung by each student to a different tune, creating a chaotic cacophony that made Harry wince at its magical dissonance, they were dismissed to bed. Percy led the first-year Gryffindors through the chattering crowds, out of the Great Hall, and up the marble staircase. Harry memorized their route automatically, noting how the portraits whispered and pointed as they passed. Twice Percy led them through doorways hidden behind sliding panels and hanging tapestries. They climbed more staircases until finally stopping before a portrait of a fat lady in a pink silk dress. Password? She asked. Caput Draconis, said Percy, and the portrait swung open to reveal a round hole in the wall. They scrambled through it to find the Gryffindor common room, a cozy, circular room full of squashy armchairs, tables, and a crackling fire. Percy directed the girls through one door to their dormitory and the boys through another. At the top of a spiral staircase, they found their beds at last, 5 four-posters hung with deep red, velvet curtains. Their trunks had already been brought up. As the other boys fell into exhausted conversation about the feast and sorting, Harry moved to the window. From here, he could see the edge of the Forbidden Forest in the moonlight. Somewhere among those trees, Mortem and the others continued their ancient lives, now without him for the first time in a decade. Missing home already? Ron asked, coming to stand beside him. Just, adjusting, Harry replied. Everything here is so, contained. Buildings, rules, schedules. Ron nodded as if he understood, though Harry doubted anyone raised in human society could truly comprehend the freedom he'd known. You'll get used to it, Ron said confidently. And hey, at least the food's good, right? Harry smiled. Different, certainly. As they prepared for bed, Harry found himself observing human rituals with anthropological interest, the way the boys claimed territory through possessions, established hierarchies through conversation, revealed insecurities through defensive jokes. When Harry finally drew the curtains around his four-poster, he lay awake listening to the unfamiliar sounds of the dormitory. No wind through leaves, no creature calls, no starlight filtering through branches, just the breathing of 4 other boys and the distant hooting of owls from the castle's owlery. He'd expected homesickness, but what he felt was more complex. This, too, was part of his heritage, this human world of stone walls and social structures. To truly understand himself, he needed to embrace both halves of his nature, the wild child of the forest and the wizard son of Lily and James Potter. With that thought, Harry finally drifted to sleep, dreaming of centaurs galloping beneath starlit skies and phoenixes soaring above ancient castle towers. Harry's first week at Hogwarts proved challenging in unexpected ways. The academics themselves came easily. He'd learned magical theory from centaurs whose understanding of magic predated wand use by millennia. The practical wand work required adjustment but soon felt natural. The real difficulties lay in social navigation and cultural adaptation. "You can't just say things like that," Hermione hissed after Harry had calmly informed Professor Binns that his account of the Goblin Rebellion contained several factual errors. "He's a professor." "But he was wrong," Harry replied, genuinely confused. "The forest goblins taught me their true history." "It doesn't matter. You don't correct teachers in front of everyone." Similar incidents occurred throughout the week. Harry asked questions that made professors uncomfortable, made observations other students found strange, and occasionally displayed magical abilities that shouldn't have been possible for a first year. In Charms, when Professor Flitwick demonstrated the Lumos spell, Harry casually mentioned that focusing on the quality of light produced more efficient results. "What do you mean, Mr. Potter?" Flitwick had asked with interest. "Like this," Harry said, raising his wand. Lumos. Instead of the standard bright white light, Harry's wand emitted a soft golden glow that illuminated the room without glare. "Extraordinary," squeaked Flitwick. "That's a variation most wizards don't master until 6th year." In herbology, Harry worked with plants as if communicating with them, which, Professor Sprout realized with amazement, he actually was. "The venomous tentacula doesn't want to be pruned today," he informed her seriously. "She's just about to flower and feels vulnerable." Professor Sprout stared at him. "How could you possibly know that?" Harry shrugged. "She told me." "Not in words, exactly, but in feelings and images." Only in potions did Harry deliberately restrain himself. From the moment he entered the dungeon classroom, Professor Snape's hostility radiated like heat from a fire. After calling roll and pausing dramatically at Harry's name, Snape launched into a barrage of advanced questions clearly meant to humiliate him. "Potter. What would I get if I added powdered root of asphodel to an infusion of wormwood?" Harry knew the answer. The Dryads had taught him extensive plant lore, but sensed that displaying this knowledge would only increase Snape's antagonism. "I don't know, sir," he replied quietly. Snape's lips curled into a sneer. "Fame clearly isn't everything. Let's try again. Where would you look if I told you to find me a bezoar?" Again, Harry knew, but again, he shook his head. "Thought you wouldn't open a book before coming, Potter." Snape continued relentlessly. "What is the difference between monkshood and wolfsbane?" At this, Harry couldn't resist. "They're the same plant, sir. Also called aconite. It grows in the forest clearings during full moons." Snape's eyes narrowed dangerously. 1 out of 3 correct. Barely better than I expected from someone raised by beasts rather than proper wizards. The insult to Harry's forest family stung, but he kept his expression neutral. Engaging Snape's hostility would solve nothing. Outside of classes, Harry found himself the object of intense curiosity. Students stared, whispered, and sometimes approached directly with questions about his scar, his parents' murder, and especially his forest upbringing. Some clearly believed the stories, others thought he was fabricating an exotic background for attention. "Did you really ride centaurs? Is it true you can speak to snakes? Have you ever seen a werewolf? Did animals bring you food like in Snow White?" Harry answered politely but briefly, growing increasingly uncomfortable with the attention. In the forest, privacy was respected, creatures interacted when necessary but otherwise maintained their distance. Here, humans seemed to crave constant social engagement, their curiosity untempered by restraint. By Friday morning, he felt the urgent need for solitude. Rising before his dorm mates, Harry slipped out of Gryffindor Tower and made his way to the castle grounds just as dawn broke over the horizon. The grass felt cool and welcoming beneath his bare feet. He'd abandoned shoes immediately after classes each day. Drawing deep breaths of fresh morning air, Harry walked toward the edge of the forbidden forest, not entering but standing at its boundary, reconnecting with the wild magic he'd missed. "Homesick, Potter," came a voice from behind him. Harry turned to find Professor McGonagall watching him with an unreadable expression. "Just balancing," he replied honestly. "The castle is intense. Lots of people, lots of structured magic." McGonagall's severe face softened slightly. "I imagine it must be quite an adjustment." She hesitated, then added, "Your mother found solace in the grounds too, though for different reasons. She would often study by the lake when the common room became too noisy." Harry absorbed this information hungrily. Any connection to his parents felt precious. What else was she like? Besides studious? Brilliant at charms. Fiercely loyal to friends. Unafraid to stand up for what she believed right, even when it was difficult. McGonagall's eyes grew distant with memory. She had a temper to match her hair when provoked, but also great capacity for kindness. "And my father?" James Potter was. McGonagall seemed to choose her words carefully. Talented. Confident to the point of arrogance in his early years, though he matured significantly later. He had a gift for transfiguration and an unfortunate penchant for rule-breaking. Harry smiled. "You make him sound like a troublemaker." "He and his friends certainly caused their share of grey hairs among the staff," McGonagall admitted with the ghost of a smile. "But he grew into a fine man, Potter. Both your parents did Gryffindor proud." The professor checked her watch. "Breakfast begins soon. You should return to the castle, unless you plan to skip meals as well as footwear." Her gaze pointedly dropped to Harry's bare feet. "Shoes restrict sensitivity to magical currents in the ground," Harry explained seriously. "But I'll wear them during classes." McGonagall sighed. "I suppose we must choose our battles." "Very well, Potter. Barefoot outside of classes, but proper uniform otherwise." This compromise suited Harry perfectly. As they walked back toward the castle together, he felt a growing appreciation for his head of house. Beneath her stern exterior lay understanding and flexibility, much like the Centaur elders who had helped raise him. Breakfast brought an unexpected surprise. Hedwig swooped down with the other male owls, carrying a note in her beak. The elegant snowy owl landed precisely beside Harry's plate, accepting a bit of bacon before extending her leg. The note was from Hagrid, inviting Harry for tea that afternoon. He scribbled a quick acceptance, which Hedwig took with a soft hoot before flying off to the Owlery. "Nice owl," said Ron, reaching for more sausages. "Looks smart." "Hedwig's extraordinary," Harry agreed. "She found me in the forest twice before I even came to Hogwarts. She understands everything I say." "Owls are highly intelligent magical creatures," Hermione said, joining their conversation uninvited as she often did. "Though they shouldn't technically be able to find someone who hasn't specifically been introduced to them." Harry shrugged. "Magical creatures often understand me better than humans do." The morning brought double potions with the Slytherins, another tense session under Snape's hostile supervision. Afterward, Harry gratefully escaped to Hagrid's hut at the edge of the grounds, Ron tagging along at Harry's invitation. Hagrid lived in a small wooden house on the grounds, a crossbow and a pair of galoshes flanking the front door. When Harry knocked, frantic scratching and booming barks echoed from inside. "Back, Fong, back!" Hagrid ordered before his hairy face appeared in the crack as he pulled the door open. "Hang on. Back, Fong." He let them in, struggling to hold on to the collar of an enormous black boarhound that immediately tried to lick Ron's ears. "Make yourselves at home," said Hagrid, releasing Fong, who bounded straight to Harry. Instead of jumping up, however, the dog immediately dropped into a submissive posture, whining softly. Harry crouched, making a soft sound in his throat, the same one he'd used during their first meeting. Fong rolled onto his back, exposing his belly trustingly. "Blimey," said Hagrid, watching this display with amazement. "Never seen him do that with anyone. Usually takes ages to warm up to strangers." "Dogs recognize forest magic," Harry explained, scratching behind Fong's ears. "It smells like authority to them." The interior of Hagrid's hut featured a single room with hams and pheasants hanging from the ceiling, a copper kettle boiling on the open fire, and a massive bed covered with a patchwork quilt in one corner. Despite its rustic simplicity, Harry felt instantly comfortable. The space reminded him of the natural structures in the forest. Hagrid poured boiling water into a large teapot and put rock cakes onto a plate. The cakes nearly broke their teeth, but Harry and Ron pretended to enjoy them as they told Hagrid about their first week of classes. "How are ya settling in, Harry?" Hagrid asked after they'd covered the basics. "Must be different from the forest." "It is," Harry admitted. "But not all bad. I'm learning a lot, especially about human interaction." "Human interaction?" Ron repeated with a grin. "You make it sound like we're a different species you're studying." "In some ways, you are," Harry replied seriously. "Forest creatures communicate directly, no hidden meanings, no social games. Humans say one thing while meaning another, follow unwritten rules, judge based on appearances." Hagrid nodded sympathetically. "Take some gettin' used to, I expect. But Yevi made friends already." He beamed at Ron. "That's a good start." Their conversation drifted to Snape's obvious dislike of Harry. When Harry mentioned the teacher's hostile questioning, Hagrid dismissed it with, "Don't worry about it," a bit too quickly. Harry's attention was caught by a newspaper clipping lying on the table, a report from Gringotts about an attempted break-in. According to the article, nothing had been taken, as the vault in question had been emptied earlier that day. "Hagrid," said Harry, "that Gringotts break-in happened on my birthday. It might have been happening while we were there." Hagrid definitely didn't meet Harry's eyes this time. He grunted and offered him another rock cake. Harry filed away this reaction, sensing a connection to the grubby package Hagrid had collected from Vault 713. On their way back to the castle, Ron chatted excitedly about wizard chess and Quidditch, while Harry contemplated the mystery of the Gringotts break-in and whatever dangerous item now apparently resided in the forbidden third-floor corridor. The following weeks brought a new challenge, flying lessons. Harry approached these with confidence, having spent countless hours soaring on Mortem's back. "Flying on a broom isn't the same as riding a magical creature," Hermione warned as they headed to their first lesson. She'd been frantically researching flying techniques, nervous about the upcoming class. "You can't just communicate with it like you do with animals. All magic responds to clear intent," Harry replied calmly. "A broom is just a channel for the wizard's will, like a wand." The lesson took place on a flat lawn opposite the Forbidden Forest, whose trees swayed darkly in the distance. The Gryffindors arrived to find the Slytherins already there, along with 20 broomsticks lying in neat lines on the ground. Their teacher, Madame Hooch, arrived shortly after. She had short, gray hair and yellow eyes like a hawk. "Well, what are you all waiting for?" she barked. "Everyone stand by a broomstick. Come on, hurry up." Harry glanced down at his broom. It was old and some of the twigs stuck out at odd angles. He could sense the magic within it, weak and unstable compared to newer models, but still responsive. "Stick out your right hand over your broom," called Madame Hooch, "and say, 'Up.'" "Up," everyone shouted. Harry's broom jumped into his hand immediately, one of the few that did. He noticed that Malfoy's had responded quickly as well, while Hermione's had simply rolled over and Neville's hadn't moved at all. Madame Hooch then showed them how to mount their brooms correctly, walking up and down the rows correcting grips. Harry had to adjust his natural instincts, developed from holding onto a Thestral's neck, to the proper broom position. "Now, when I blow my whistle, you kick off from the ground, hard," said Madame Hooch. "Keep your broom steady, rise a few feet, and then come straight back down by leaning forward slightly. On my whistle, 3, 2, but Neville, nervous and jumpy and frightened of being left on the ground, pushed off hard before the whistle had touched Madame Hooch's lips. The broom rose rapidly, Neville's panicked face growing smaller as he ascended. Harry saw what would happen before it did, the magic in Neville's broom responding to his fear rather than his conscious control. When Neville slipped sideways off the broom and began to fall, Harry reacted instinctively. He kicked off from the ground, directing his broom with natural precision. As Neville plummeted, Harry accelerated beneath him, catching the falling boy across his broom before he could hit the ground. The impact nearly unseated them both, but Harry compensated with practiced balance, bringing the overloaded broom to a gentle landing. Neville tumbled off, face white and shaking, but unharmed. Dead silence fell over the class. Then, Potter. Madame Hooch hurried over, expression caught between anger and amazement. What were you thinking? You could have saved young Longbottom from a nasty fall, it appears, came Professor McGonagall's voice as she approached the group, having witnessed the incident from her office window. That was quite a catch, Mr. Potter. Harry shrugged, uncomfortable with the attention. It was obvious he would fall. The broom responded to his fear rather than his commands. Madame Hooch had recovered her composure. While admirably quick-thinking, Potter, students must follow instructions during flying lessons. Safety protocols exist for a reason. With respect, madam, Harry replied calmly, sometimes immediate action is safer than following protocols. In the forest, hesitation often means death. This statement caused another uncomfortable silence. McGonagall cleared her throat. Nevertheless, Potter, in future please alert an instructor rather than taking matters into your own hands. She paused, then added in a lower voice, though I must say, that was some of the finest instinctive flying I've seen in a first year. Have you flown before? Not on a broom, Harry answered honestly. McGonagall's eyebrows rose, but she simply nodded. I see. Well, carry on with your lesson. Mr. Longbottom, are you injured? Neville shook his head, still trembling slightly. And no, Professor. Thanks to Harry. After McGonagall departed and the lesson resumed, Malfoy couldn't resist commenting. Special treatment already, Potter. McGonagall would have punished anyone else. She recognized good flying, Ron defended hotly. Something you wouldn't know about, Malfoy. Oh really? Malfoy sneered. I'd take Potter on any day. Tonight, if he wants. Wizard's duel. He accepts, Ron said immediately. I'm his second. Who's yours? Crabbe, said Malfoy after sizing up his cronies. Midnight, trophy room. That's always unlocked. Before Harry could speak, Madame Hooch called them back to attention for the remainder of the lesson. When they finally returned to the ground, Ron looked triumphant while Hermione appeared scandalized. You can't go dueling after hours, she hissed as they headed back to the castle. You'll lose points for Gryffindor, or worse, get expelled. I didn't agree to anything, Harry pointed out mildly. Ron accepted for me. Ron looked crestfallen. But you have to go. You can't let Malfoy think you're scared. I'm not scared, Harry replied. I just don't see the point in fighting without purpose. In the forest, conflicts happen for territory, mates, or survival, not ego. This is different, Ron insisted. It's about respect. Respect is earned through actions worth respecting, Harry said, not midnight duels with schoolyard rivals. This philosophical statement left Ron speechless and Hermione looking at Harry with newfound appreciation. That's very wise, she said finally. Did the centaurs teach you that? Harry nodded. They have long memories of meaningless wizard conflicts. They find human posturing amusing. Despite his refusal to participate in the duel, news of Harry's flying skill spread quickly through Gryffindor Tower. By dinner, several older students had approached to ask if he planned to try out for the Quidditch team next year. First years never make the house teams, Percy informed them pompously. Not that Potter couldn't benefit from the discipline of organized sport. Might civilize him a bit. Harry ignored such comments, growing used to the mixed reactions his forest upbringing provoked: fascination, skepticism, and occasionally, like Percy's remark, condescension. The wizarding world seemed determined to categorize him: celebrity, curiosity, savior, or wild child. Few bothered to see the person beneath the labels. That evening, as the common room slowly emptied, Harry sat cross-legged by the fire, practicing a form of meditation the unicorns had taught him. With eyes half closed, he sensed the castle's magic flowing around and through him, ancient protective enchantments, the residue of thousands of spells cast by students and teachers, and beneath it all, the living essence of Hogwarts itself. "What are you doing?" Hermione's voice broke his concentration. She had approached silently, a heavy book clutched to her chest. "Listening to the castle," Harry replied, opening his eyes fully. "Listening?" Hermione looked skeptical but curious. "You mean metaphorically?" "No, literally. Magic makes a kind of music, different for each source. The forest sounds like wine through leaves and water over stones. The castle sounds like humming stone and sleeping giants." Hermione sat down beside him, setting her book aside. "I've never heard anyone describe magic that way." "Most wizards don't listen," Harry said simply. "They're too busy directing magic to notice what it's already doing." Hermione hesitated, then continued with uncharacteristic uncertainty, "Could you teach me to listen?" Harry studied her thoughtfully. Since arriving at Hogwarts, Hermione had demonstrated incredible knowledge about magic but little intuitive connection to it. She approached spellcasting as a technical exercise: precise movements, perfect pronunciation, textbook results. "I can try," he said finally. "Close your eyes." For the next hour, Harry guided Hermione through basic sensory awareness exercises the centaurs had taught him as a child. At first, she struggled, her mind constantly analyzing rather than experiencing, but gradually, her breathing slowed, her furrowed brow relaxed. "I think I feel something," she whispered eventually. "Like vibrations? But not physical ones." "That's the castle's baseline magic," Harry confirmed. "The protection spells laid into the foundations." Hermione's eyes flew open, shining with excitement. "That's extraordinary. Why doesn't anyone teach this? It could revolutionize spellcasting if students understood the underlying magical currents they're working with." "Some creatures would say wizards deliberately avoid teaching it," Harry replied. "Control is valued over connection in human magic." Hermione began heatedly, then stopped, considering. "Actually, that makes sense. All our textbooks focus on how to make magic do what we want, not on understanding what it's already doing." They continued talking until the common room emptied completely, discussing the differences between forest magic and wizard magic. For the first time since arriving at Hogwarts, Harry felt truly engaged in conversation. Hermione's analytical mind complemented his intuitive understanding, each perspective enriching the other. By the time they finally headed to their respective dormitories, a deeper friendship had formed between them, one built on genuine intellectual exchange rather than the circumstantial proximity that had initially connected Harry with his housemates. The weeks leading up to Halloween brought increasing comfort with castle life. Harry established routines that balanced his forest nature with school requirements: early mornings spent barefoot on the grounds, connecting with the natural world, days devoted to classes and human socialization, evenings for homework and quiet reflection. Friendships developed naturally. Ron remained Harry's closest male friend, providing valuable insights into wizard culture and family life. Hermione, following their meditation session, sought Harry out regularly for discussions about magical theory that often left them both exhilarated by new possibilities. Neville, grateful for the flying incident, attached himself to their group with quiet loyalty. Harry's relationship with the castle itself also evolved. He discovered hidden passages that weren't on any map, communicated with portraits that hadn't spoken in decades, and developed an uncanny ability to navigate Hogwarts' shifting architecture. "How did you know that staircase was about to move?" Ron demanded one day as Harry calmly stepped off just before it swung to a new position. "I felt it preparing to change," Harry explained. "The magic shifts about 3 seconds before the physical movement." Such abilities added to Harry's growing reputation as unusual even by wizarding standards. Some students found his differences fascinating, others, particularly among the Slytherins, treated him with suspicion or outright hostility. Draco Malfoy, still smarting from both their train encounter and Harry's refusal to engage in the midnight duel, took every opportunity to mock Harry's background. Raised by beasts in the forest, he would sneer loudly whenever Harry passed. "No wonder he doesn't know how proper wizards behave. Probably eats with his hands when no one's watching." Harry ignored these taunts with the same calm detachment he'd show a chattering squirrel. In the forest, he'd learned that responding to provocation often escalated conflicts unnecessarily. His peaceful approach frustrated Malfoy, who increased his efforts to get a reaction. The situation came to a head during a potions class in late October. Snape had paired students to brew a simple healing potion. Harry worked with Neville, quietly guiding the nervous boy through each step. At the next table, Malfoy and Crabbe whispered and snickered, occasionally glancing toward Harry. As Harry reached for more dried nettles, Malfoy flicked something into their cauldron, a firecracker that immediately began fizzing beneath the surface of their half-finished potion. Harry's enhanced senses detected the danger instantly. In one fluid motion, he grabbed Neville by the back of his robes and pulled him away from the workstation just as their cauldron erupted, spraying caustic liquid across their table. Several students screamed as potion droplets flew through the air. But remarkably, not a single person was hit. Harry had moved with such precise timing that he and Neville escaped unscathed, while the worst of the explosion somehow missed the surrounding students. Silence fell over the dungeon as everyone stared at Harry, who stood calmly beside a trembling Neville. "What," Snape said in a dangerous whisper, "is the meaning of this?" "Someone threw a filibuster firework into our cauldron, Professor," Harry replied evenly. Snape's black eyes swept the classroom. "And you expect me to believe that you had nothing to do with this disruption? Perhaps an attempt to show off your unusual reflexes?" "Check Malfoy's bag," Harry suggested. "I believe you'll find more fireworks there." Fury flashed across Malfoy's pale face. "That's a lie." "Is it?" Harry asked quietly. "The residue on your fingers matches the chemical smell from the explosion." All eyes turned to Malfoy's right hand, where faint traces of powder were indeed visible on his fingertips. Snape found himself in an uncomfortable position. His bias toward Slytherin students, especially Malfoy, was well known, but the evidence against his favorite pupil was difficult to ignore with so many witnesses. "Mr. Malfoy," he said finally, his voice cold, "empty your pockets." Malfoy's face flushed as he reluctantly produced 3 more filibuster fireworks from his robe pocket. "Detention, Mr. Malfoy," Snape said, each word seeming physically painful to pronounce. "And 5 points from Slytherin for dangerous foolishness." The Gryffindors exchanged shocked glances. Snape taking points from his own house was unprecedented. But what happened next surprised them even more. "As for you, Potter," Snape continued, black eyes glittering, 5 points to Gryffindor for acceptable observational skills. The classroom erupted in whispers. Harry merely nodded, neither triumphant nor surprised by the grudging acknowledgement. After class, Ron couldn't contain his amazement. "That was brilliant. How did you know Malfoy did it? And how did you move so fast?" "Forest reflexes," Harry explained as they climbed the stairs out of the dungeons. "When you live among acromantulas and other predators, you develop quick reactions." But even Snape couldn't deny it, Ron marveled. "He actually gave you points." "Professor Snape values survival skills," Harry observed. "He may not like me, but he respects competence." This incident marked a subtle shift in Harry's reputation. Students who had dismissed his forest stories as exaggerations now reconsidered, having witnessed his unusual abilities firsthand. Even Snape's treatment of Harry changed slightly, still cold and often unfair, but with occasional flashes of reluctant respect. Halloween morning dawned with the delicious smell of baking pumpkin wafting through the corridors. Even better, Professor Flitwick announced in charms that they were ready to start making objects fly, something everyone had been eager to try since watching him make Neville's toad zoom around the classroom. Professor Flitwick put the class into pairs. Harry was partnered with Seamus Finnegan, while Ron worked with Hermione. Neither Ron nor Hermione looked happy about this arrangement. "Now, don't forget that nice wrist movement we've been practicing," squeaked Professor Flitwick, perched on his pile of books. "Swish and flick, remember, swish and flick. And saying the magic words properly is very important, too." Harry succeeded on his first attempt, causing the feather to rise gracefully from the desk and hover at eye level. After receiving praise from Flitwick, he quietly helped Seamus, who had managed to set his feather on fire. At the next table, Ron was having less success. "Wingardium Leviosa," he shouted, waving his arms like a windmill. "You're saying it wrong," Harry heard Hermione snap. "It's Wingardium Leviosa, make the gar nice and long." "You do it, then, if you're so clever," Ron snarled. Hermione rolled up her sleeves, flicked her wand, and said, "Wingardium Leviosa." Their feather rose off the desk and hovered about 4 feet above their heads. "Oh, well done," cried Professor Flitwick, clapping. "Everyone see here, Miss Granger's done it too." By the end of class, Ron was in a very bad mood. "It's no wonder no one can stand her," he said to Harry as they pushed their way into the crowded corridor. "She's a nightmare, honestly." Someone knocked into Harry as they hurried past. It was Hermione, and Harry was startled to see tears in her eyes as she rushed away. "I think she heard you," Harry said quietly. "So?" said Ron, looking uncomfortable. "She must have noticed she's got no friends." Harry frowned. "She is my friend. And yours too, even if you argue." Ron looked guilty but said nothing more. Hermione didn't appear for their next class, nor was she seen all afternoon. On their way to the Halloween feast, Harry and Ron overheard Parvati Patil telling her friend Lavender that Hermione was crying in the girls' bathroom and wanted to be left alone. This information made Ron look even more awkward, but Harry's attention had shifted elsewhere. As they entered the great hall, decorated with live bats and giant pumpkins, he felt a strange magical disturbance, something that didn't belong, a discordant note in the castle's usual harmony. The Halloween feast appeared on golden plates as it had at the start of term banquet, but Harry found himself unable to enjoy it. The unsettling magical sensation grew stronger, and he kept glancing toward the doors, inexplicably worried about Hermione's absence. His concern proved justified when Professor Quirrell, the Defense Against the Dark Arts teacher, came sprinting into the hall, his turban askew and terror on his face. "Troll, in the dungeons, thought you ought to know." He then sank to the floor in a dead faint. The hall erupted in chaos. It took several purple firecrackers exploding from the end of Dumbledore's wand to bring silence. "Prefects," he rumbled, "lead your houses back to the dormitories immediately." Percy was in his element, ordering Gryffindors around officiously. "Follow me. Stick together, first years. No need to fear the troll if you follow my orders. Stay close behind me, now." As they joined the Hufflepuff streaming in the opposite direction, Harry grabbed Ron's arm. "Hermione," he said urgently. "She doesn't know about the troll." Ron bit his lip, torn between following Percy's instructions and guilt over Hermione's absence. "Oh, all right," he agreed finally. "But Percy'd better not see us." Ducking down, they joined the Hufflepuffs going the other way, slipped down a deserted side corridor, and hurried toward the girls' bathroom. They had just turned the corner when they heard quick footsteps behind them. "Percy," hissed Ron, pulling Harry behind a large stone griffin. Peering around it, they saw not Percy but Snape crossing the corridor and disappearing from view. "Why isn't he down in the dungeons with the rest of the teachers?" Harry whispered. "No idea," Ron murmured back. They crept along the next corridor after Snape's fading footsteps. Harry noticed they were heading toward the third floor, and the forbidden corridor Dumbledore had mentioned at the start of term. Before they could investigate further, a foul stench reached their nostrils, a mixture of old socks and public toilet no one bothered to clean. And then they heard it, low grunting and the shuffling of enormous feet. Ron pointed. At the end of a passage, something huge was moving toward them. They shrank into the shadows as it emerged into a patch of moonlight. It was a horrible sight, 12 feet tall, its skin a dull, granite gray, its great lumpy body like a boulder with a small bald head perched on top. It had short legs thick as tree trunks with flat, horny feet. The smell coming from it was incredible. It held a huge wooden club, which dragged along the floor because its arms were so long. The troll stopped beside a doorway and peered inside. It waggled its long ears, seemingly making up its tiny mind, then slouched slowly into the room. "The key's in the lock," Harry muttered. "We could lock it in." "Good idea," said Ron nervously. They edged toward the open door, Ron reaching for the key with trembling fingers. With a quick snick, he locked the troll inside and they backed away rapidly. "Yes!" Ron exulted. Their moment of triumph lasted exactly 3 seconds, until a high, terrified scream came from the chamber they'd just locked. "Hermione," they said together in horror. It was the girls' bathroom, and they'd just locked a mountain troll inside with Hermione. Harry reacted instantly, darting back to the door and turning the key. Ron hesitated only a second before following him into the bathroom. Hermione was shrinking against the opposite wall, looking as if she was about to faint. The troll was advancing on her, knocking sinks off the walls as it went. "Confuse it," Harry called to Ron, grabbing a tap and throwing it hard against the wall. The troll stopped, blinking stupidly, then turned its ugly snout toward Harry, giving Hermione time to duck and crawl under the sinks. "Oi, pea-brain!" shouted Ron from the other side of the chamber, throwing a metal pipe at the creature. It didn't even seem to notice the pipe hitting its shoulder, but it heard Ron's yell and paused, turning toward him instead. Harry took advantage of the distraction to circle around the troll. Rather than attacking, however, he did something neither Ron nor Hermione expected. He made a series of low, rumbling sounds deep in his throat, sounds no human should have been able to produce. The troll froze, its tiny eyes widening in what looked remarkably like surprise. Harry continued the strange vocalization, maintaining steady eye contact with the creature. The troll lowered its club slightly, head tilted in apparent confusion. "What are you doing?" Hermione whispered frantically from beneath the sinks. "Communicating," Harry replied softly without breaking eye contact. "Mountain trolls are distant relatives of forest trolls. Similar language base." The troll made a guttural noise back at Harry, who responded with another series of rumbles and growls. This bizarre exchange continued for several tense moments while Ron and Hermione watched in amazement. Finally, the troll lowered its club completely, looking almost sheepish. "It's confused," Harry explained quietly. "Someone compelled it to enter the castle, a magical command it couldn't resist. It doesn't know why it's here or what it's supposed to do." "You can understand it?" Ron asked incredulously. "Not precisely," Harry said. "Trolls don't think like humans. More impressions than coherent thoughts. But yes, we're communicating." He turned back to the troll and made another rumbling sound. The troll responded with a noise that almost sounded plaintive. "It wants to return to its mountains," Harry translated. "I've told it we can help." At that moment, the bathroom door burst open and Professors McGonagall, Snape, and Quirrell rushed in, wands drawn. They stopped dead at the extraordinary scene before them, a full-grown mountain troll standing docilely while Harry Potter appeared to be having a conversation with it. "What in Merlin's name?" Professor McGonagall began, too shocked to complete her question. Quirrell took one look at the troll, let out a faint whimper, and sat quickly down on a toilet, clutching his heart. Snape bent over the troll, his wand still pointed at it cautiously. It was confused and frightened, Harry explained calmly. Someone used magic to compel it into the castle against its will. It's not naturally aggressive toward humans unless threatened. The three professors stared at him in stunned silence. Potter, McGonagall finally said, her voice faint, are you suggesting you can communicate with trolls? Mountain trolls share language roots with forest trolls, Harry explained, as if this were common knowledge. The dialect is different, but the basic sound patterns are similar enough for rudimentary communication. Snape's expression had moved beyond disbelief to something like calculation. And what, exactly, did it tell you about how it entered the castle? It felt a pulling sensation that it couldn't resist, Harry said. Magic that forced it to come here and cause destruction. But it doesn't know who cast the spell. McGonagall and Snape exchanged significant glances. Quirrell remained silent, still clutching his chest. Well, said McGonagall finally, recovering her composure, this is unprecedented. Mr. Potter, please step away from the troll so we can properly subdue it and remove it from the castle. Harry turned back to the troll and made a final series of sounds. The creature grunted in response and, to everyone's astonishment, placed its massive club on the floor and sat down heavily, as if resigned to its fate. It will cooperate, Harry assured them. I promised it wouldn't be harmed if it remained peaceful. The professors worked quickly to bind the troll with magical restraints, though these proved barely necessary given the creature's continued docility. Throughout the process, it kept looking to Harry as if for reassurance, which he provided through occasional rumbling sounds. Once the troll was secured, McGonagall turned her attention to the three students. Now, explain why you three weren't in your dormitory. Hermione stepped forward before either boy could speak. It's my fault, Professor McGonagall. I went looking for the troll because I thought I could deal with it on my own. I've read all about them. Ron dropped his wand in shock at this blatant lie from rule-abiding Hermione. Harry simply watched her, understanding the motivation behind her deception. She was protecting them, particularly Ron, whose earlier comments had driven her to the bathroom in the first place. If they hadn't found me, I'd be dead now, Hermione continued. Harry communicated with it, and Ron distracted it so I could escape. They didn't have time to fetch anyone. It was about to finish me off when they arrived. McGonagall regarded them all sternly. Miss Granger, foolish girl, how could you think of tackling a mountain troll on your own? Hermione hung her head in convincing shame. 5 points will be taken from Gryffindor for this, said McGonagall. I'm very disappointed in you. If you're not hurt at all, you'd better get off to Gryffindor Tower. Students are finishing the feast in their houses. Hermione left quickly, leaving the boys with the professors. Well, I still say you were lucky, McGonagall said to Harry and Ron, but not many first-years could have taken on a full-grown mountain troll and lived to tell the tale. Mr. Weasley, 5 points to Gryffindor for quick thinking in a crisis. She turned to Harry, her expression a mixture of exasperation and amazement. And you, Mr. Potter, 5 points to Gryffindor for demonstrating interspecies communication skills that I didn't even know were possible. Professor Dumbledore will want to hear about this. As they were dismissed and headed toward Gryffindor Tower, Harry noticed Snape watching him with an unreadable expression. The potions master's robes were torn near the ankle, and Harry caught a glimpse of a bloody gash on his leg before Snape quickly covered it. The third-floor corridor. The troll as a diversion. Someone had used magic to compel the creature into the castle, perhaps the same person who had attempted to break into Gringotts. The pieces were beginning to form a pattern, though its full shape remained unclear. Hermione waited for them at the entrance to the common room. There was an awkward pause before all three of them said, "Thanks," simultaneously, then laughed, breaking the tension. From that moment on, Hermione Granger became their firm friend. Some experiences create bonds that transcend ordinary friendship, and talking down a 12-foot mountain troll is one of them. But as Harry climbed into his four-poster that night, his thoughts weren't on their new friendship, but on the mystery deepening within Hogwarts' walls. Someone was after whatever had been moved from Gringotts to the school. Someone with enough power to control a mountain troll. Someone who might be inside Hogwarts itself. For the first time since arriving at the castle, Harry found himself missing the forest's straightforward dangers. At least there, threats announced themselves honestly, no deception, no hidden agendas, just the clear line between predator and prey. Human conflicts, he was learning, involved far more complex and insidious dangers. Chapter 3, The Forest's Champion. November brought bitter cold to Hogwarts. The mountains around the school turned icy gray and the lake chilled to steel. Every morning, frost covered the grounds like a blanket of diamonds. Hagrid could be seen from upstairs windows defrosting broomsticks on the Quidditch field, bundled in his long moleskin overcoat and rabbit fur gloves. For most students, this weather meant huddling in the castle's warmth between classes. For Harry, it meant freedom. "You're seriously going outside?" Ron stared incredulously as Harry headed toward the portrait hole wearing only his school robes. "It's freezing." "Cold doesn't bother me much," Harry replied. "The forest gets much colder than this." This was true, though not the whole truth. What Harry craved wasn't just outdoor air but solitude. 2 weeks had passed since the troll incident, and he barely had a moment to himself. News of his troll communication had spread through the school like wildfire, elevating his already substantial fame to near-mythic status. Students followed him through corridors, whispering and pointing. Older Gryffindors clapped him on the back and asked for demonstrations of his troll talk. Even teachers watched him with new interest, as if re-evaluating everything they thought they knew about the boy who lived. Only outside, with bare feet pressing into frost-covered grass, could Harry reconnect with the quiet centeredness the forest had instilled in him. He walked toward the edge of the forbidden forest, close enough to feel its wild magic but not so close as to violate his promise to Dumbledore about entering without permission. Settling cross-legged on a flat stone, Harry closed his eyes and breathed deeply. The sensation came immediately, a familiar current of magic flowing from the ancient trees, recognizing him, welcoming him. Though physically separated from his forest family, their magic still touched his. Harry extended his awareness outward, letting his magical senses roam. He felt the giant squid moving lazily through the lake's depths, hibernating merpeople in their underwater village, centaurs cantering between trees deep in the forest. All connected, all part of the greater magical ecosystem surrounding Hogwarts. "I wondered if I might find you here." Harry opened his eyes to see Albus Dumbledore standing nearby, his long silver beard and hair shimmering in the morning light. Despite the cold, the headmaster wore only his usual robes, seemingly unbothered by the temperature. "Good morning, Professor," Harry greeted him, making no move to stand. The forest had taught him that true respect wasn't shown through artificial formalities. Dumbledore's eyes twinkled as he gestured to the stone beside Harry. "May I join you?" Harry nodded, shifting to make room. The headmaster sat with surprising grace for a man of his age. "Professor McGonagall tells me you communicated with our mountain troll visitor," Dumbledore said, gazing toward the forest rather than at Harry. "Most extraordinary." "Not really," Harry replied honestly. "Trolls aren't complex thinkers, but they have language. The forest taught me to listen beyond words." "And what did this troll tell you?" "That it was compelled by magic to enter the castle. It couldn't resist the command." Dumbledore nodded thoughtfully. "As I suspected. Few wizards could control a full-grown mountain troll with such precision." Harry sensed the headmaster hadn't sought him out merely to discuss the troll. "Something's hidden in the castle," he observed. "Something valuable. Something worth stealing from Gringotts and worth using a troll as distraction to reach." Dumbledore's eyebrows rose slightly. "You've been paying attention." "The forest teaches observation," Harry said simply. "Patterns reveal themselves to those who watch patiently." "Indeed they do." Dumbledore turned to study Harry properly. You're different from what I expected, Harry. Because I wasn't raised by my relatives. Partially. But more fundamentally, you approach magic differently from any student I've encountered in my considerable years of teaching. You seem to collaborate with it, rather than command it. Harry considered this characterization. Wizard magic focuses on control, forcing magic to obey the caster's will. Forest magic is about harmony, finding the natural flow and working within it. A philosophical distinction most adult wizards never grasp, Dumbledore noted with approval. Yet your practical results in classes are uneven, I understand. This was true. 2 months into term, Harry's academic performance varied wildly across subjects. In practical magic, charms, transfiguration, even defense against the dark arts, he excelled, often mastering spells in minutes that took other students days to perform adequately. His intuitive understanding of magical theory impressed even the strictest professors. But subjects requiring rigid methodology, potions, astronomy, even parts of herbology, proved challenging. Harry struggled with precise measurements, fixed procedures, and anything requiring adherence to arbitrary human systems. I'm trying, Harry said, but some of it feels unnecessary. Counterproductive, even. Unnecessary. Dumbledore repeated with interest. Like in potions. Professor Snape insists we stir exactly 7 times clockwise. But the potion itself tells you when it's ready if you just listen to it. Feel its magic changing. And have you attempted to make potions by listening to them? Harry looked slightly guilty. Once. After hours. The potion worked, but differently from the textbook example. More potent in some ways, less in others. Rather than reprimanding him, Dumbledore smiled. Fascinating. You're discovering what few wizards ever realize, that magic has its own nature beyond our human categorization. Yet I must caution you, Harry, that these established methods exist for good reasons. They provide consistency, safety, predictability. I understand, Harry said, though his tone suggested he didn't entirely agree. Perhaps, Dumbledore mused, what you need is a different approach to learning. One that honors both your forest-taught intuition and the structured knowledge wizarding education provides. He reached into his robes and withdrew a small, ancient-looking book bound in faded green leather. This belonged to your mother. Professor Flitwick returned it to me after that night. I think she would want you to have it. Harry accepted the book reverently, running his fingers over its worn cover. No title marked its exterior. Your mother was exceptionally gifted at charms, Dumbledore explained. This was her personal research journal. She, too, sometimes questioned established magical practices, though from a different perspective than yours. Harry carefully opened the book. Inside, elegant handwriting filled the pages, notes, diagrams, and spell variations documented in meticulous detail. His mother's handwriting. Her thoughts preserved in ink. Emotion tightened his throat. Thank you, he managed. Dumbledore nodded, understanding the depth of feeling behind those simple words. I suggest you review your mother's approach. She found ways to improve established spells without abandoning their fundamental principles. Perhaps her methods might help bridge the gap between your intuitive magic and formal wizarding education. They sat in companionable silence for several minutes, watching the winter sun climb higher above the forbidden forest. Finally, Dumbledore rose. One last thing, Harry. While your connection to the forest is valuable, irreplaceable, even, remember that you now walk in 2 worlds. Each has wisdom to offer. The greatest magic often emerges at such crossroads. With that cryptic advice, the headmaster departed, leaving Harry alone with his mother's journal and much to contemplate. The first Quidditch match of the season, Gryffindor vs. Slytherin, brought the entire school to the stands despite the cold November weather. Harry sat with Hermione, Ron, Neville, and Hagrid, watching with interest as the teams took flight. I still think you should have tried out, Ron said, nudging Harry. McGonagall would have bent the first-year rule for you after seeing that catch you made saving Neville. Harry shook his head. Flying on a broom is fun, but organized sports seem complicated. Complicated? Ron looked scandalized. It's Quidditch. The greatest game ever invented. So many rules, Harry elaborated. So much strategy. In the forest, games are simpler, tests of natural skill without artificial constraints. Before Ron could defend the sacred complexity of Quidditch, the teams launched into the air, and the game began. Harry watched with genuine interest, appreciating the players' skill while still finding the structured nature of the sport somewhat perplexing. Halfway through the match, with Gryffindor leading by 30 points, Harry felt a strange prickling at his scar, a sensation he'd experienced occasionally since arriving at Hogwarts, but never this intensely. Simultaneously, he noticed the Gryffindor Seeker's broom behaving oddly, jerking and twitching as if trying to buck its rider. "Something's wrong," Harry said sharply, scanning the crowd. "Someone's interfering with McGregor's broom." Hermione followed his gaze. "What do you mean? How could anyone?" "Magical manipulation." Harry's eyes narrowed as he focused on the teacher's stand. "There, someone's maintaining eye contact and muttering continuously." Hermione raised her binoculars. "I see Snape. He's staring at McGregor and he's not blinking." "But Professor Quirrell is doing the same thing," Harry pointed out, his magical senses detecting complex energies flowing from both teachers. "What should we do?" Hermione asked frantically as McGregor barely held on to his wildly bucking broom. Harry closed his eyes briefly, sensing the magical currents connecting the teachers to the broom. "One is attacking, one is defending. I can't tell which is which." Without waiting for a response, Harry extended his own magic, not through his wand but directly, as the forest creatures had taught him. He visualized a shield surrounding the Gryffindor Seeker's broom, a buffer against external manipulation. The broom's jerking immediately lessened, though it didn't stop completely. Harry maintained his focus, sweat beading on his forehead despite the November chill. "Whatever you're doing, keep doing it," Hermione whispered, watching in awe as stability gradually returned to McGregor's broom. "I'll create a distraction." Before Harry could respond, she disappeared into the crowd. Minutes later, a commotion erupted in the teacher's stand. Hermione had apparently set fire to someone's robes. In the ensuing confusion, the magical interference ceased completely, allowing McGregor to regain full control of his broom. The Gryffindor Seeker, clearly shaken but determined, spotted the snitch moments later and dived, catching it inches from the ground and securing a Gryffindor victory. As celebrations erupted around them, Harry remained thoughtful. The incident confirmed his suspicions that something dangerous was unfolding at Hogwarts. Either Snape or Quirrell had attempted to seriously harm a student in full view of the entire school, a bold move suggesting desperation. It was Snape, Ron insisted as they gathered in Hagrid's hut after the match for tea. Hermione saw him cursing the broom. "Rubbish," said Hagrid, who hadn't heard about the incident. "Why would Snape do something like that?" Harry exchanged glances with Hermione and Ron before speaking carefully. "We think someone at Hogwarts is trying to steal whatever's being guarded on the 3rd floor. The troll on Halloween was a diversion." "Nonsense," Hagrid said, though he suddenly looked uncomfortable. "Who told ya about?" "I mean, there's nothin' bein' guarded." "Hagrid," Harry said quietly, "we know about the 3-headed dog." This was a slight exaggeration. They hadn't actually seen the creature themselves, but Harry had sensed its presence during his magical explorations of the castle, and Fred and George Weasley had confirmed its existence after a close call during one of their nighttime wanderings. "How do you know about Fluffy?" Hagrid demanded. "Fluffy?" Ron repeated incredulously. "Yeah, he's mine, bought him off a Greek chappie I met in the pub last year. I lent him to Dumbledore to guard the—" He stopped abruptly. "Yes?" Harry prompted. "No, that's top secret, that is," Hagrid said gruffly. "But someone's trying to steal it," Hermione insisted. Rubbish, Hagrid repeated. It's too well protected. It's not just fluffy garden pit, there are enchantments from most of the teachers. No one could get past M. Then why did someone let a troll into the school as a diversion? Harry asked. Why try to eliminate witnesses by jinxing a Quidditch player? These aren't random events, Hagrid. The gamekeeper looked troubled but maintained his silence about the guarded object. Harry decided to try another approach. Does this have anything to do with Nicholas Flamel? It was a shot in the dark, a name Harry had glimpsed in Dumbledore's office on a letter partially visible on his desk. The startled expression on Hagrid's face confirmed he'd hit the mark. How do ye? Hagrid began, then caught himself. Listen to me, all three of ye. You're meddlin' in things that don't concern ye. Forget about Flamel, forget about what's bein' guarded. That's between Professor Dumbledore and Nicholas Flamel. Though Hagrid refused to reveal more, this slip provided the information they needed. Later, in the Gryffindor common room, Hermione practically vibrated with excitement. Nicholas Flamel, she whispered, I know I've read that name somewhere. Now we have something specific to research. Ron looked less enthusiastic about the prospect of library research, but Harry found himself curious. Not just about Flamel and whatever valuable item had been moved from Gringotts to Hogwarts, but about the broader mystery unfolding within the castle walls. Someone was willing to risk exposure by attacking a student during a Quidditch match. Someone powerful enough to control a mountain troll. Someone desperate to obtain an object connected to Nicholas Flamel. The pattern was becoming clearer, but its implications remained troubling. If such dangers existed within Hogwarts itself, what might be happening beyond its walls, in the forest that had been Harry's only home for a decade? December arrived with more than a foot of snow and temperatures that plunged below freezing. The lake froze solid, and the Weasley twins were punished for bewitching snowballs to follow Professor Quirrell around, bouncing off the back of his turban. Few owls managed to battle their way through the stormy sky to deliver mail, but Hedwig appeared regularly at breakfast, sometimes bearing notes from the forest creatures who had learned to attach small messages to her leg. The elegant snowy owl seemed immune to the weather, her white feathers blending perfectly with the winter landscape. As the holidays approached, Harry faced his first significant decision since coming to Hogwarts, whether to return to the forest for Christmas or remain at the castle. You have to stay. Ron insisted, having signed up to remain at school while his parents visited his brother Charlie in Romania. Think of the feast, the decorations, the presents. But the forest is my home, Harry replied, torn between worlds. Mortem and the others will be expecting me. Couldn't they? I don't know. Come visit you here. Ron suggested weakly. Harry smiled at the image of centaurs and acromantulas attending a Hogwarts Christmas dinner. Not exactly. The decision resolved itself when Professor McGonagall approached Harry after Transfiguration class with a note from Dumbledore. The headmaster had arranged special permission for Harry to visit the forest during the holiday break, provided he check in with Hagrid daily and return to the castle each evening. Professor Dumbledore believes maintaining your connection to the forest is important, McGonagall explained, looking slightly skeptical herself. Though I still find it remarkable that magical creatures raised a human child successfully. More than successfully, Harry replied with unexpected firmness. They gave me a home, family, education, and love. Everything a child needs. McGonagall's expression softened. Indeed, Mr. Potter. I didn't mean to suggest otherwise. When the holiday break finally began, most students departed on the Hogwarts Express, leaving the castle nearly empty. Harry bid goodbye to Hermione, who was returning to her parents for Christmas, promising to continue researching Nicholas Flamel during the break. On the first morning of vacation, Harry woke before dawn, buzzing with anticipation. After a quick breakfast, he slipped out of the castle and raced across the snowy grounds toward the Forbidden Forest, his bare feet leaving tracks in the pristine white blanket. At the forest's edge, he paused, breathing in the familiar sense of pine, earth, and magic. Then, with a sensation like coming home after a long journey, he stepped beneath the ancient trees. The forest in winter differed dramatically from its summer aspect. Leafless branches created intricate patterns against the gray sky. Snow transformed the landscape into a sculpted wonderland. Magic flowed more visibly in the cold air, visible to Harry's trained senses as subtle, shifting colors. He moved silently through this winter realm, following paths no human eye could discern. Within minutes, he sensed a familiar presence, the unique magical signature of his oldest friend and guardian. "Mortem," he called softly. The Thestral materialized from between snow-laden pines, his skeletal form a stark contrast to the white surroundings. Though invisible to most humans, to Harry the creature had always been perfectly clear, a living embodiment of the boundary between worlds. "Little Shadow," Mortem greeted him, pressing his bony head against Harry's shoulder. "You return at last." Harry embraced the Thestral, feeling the cold magic that emanated from his guardian's form, not unfriendly, simply different from the warm energy of living flesh. "I've missed you. Missed all of this." "And we have missed you," Mortem replied. "Come." The others wait at the heart tree. Together they traveled deeper into the forest, Harry sometimes walking, sometimes riding on Mortem's back as they had done countless times before. The journey felt simultaneously strange and familiar. Harry's time at Hogwarts had changed him in subtle ways, yet his connection to the forest remained undiminished. The Council Hollow appeared before them, the ancient oak at its center, the heart tree, standing sentinel as it had for centuries. Around it gathered representatives from the forest's magical communities, centaurs led by Megorian, unicorns including Amalthea and her now silver foal, acromantulas, bowtruckles, and even a delegation of forest goblins. Harry dismounted from Mortem's back and approached the gathering with proper ceremonial respect, bowing first to the heart tree itself, then to each species' elders in turn. "The forest's child returns," announced Megorian, his deep voice carrying through the snow-hushed hollow. "Changed, yet unchanged." "I return with gratitude and respect," Harry replied formally, completing the traditional greeting. Then, formalities satisfied, he broke into a genuine smile. "It's good to see you all." The next hours passed in a joyful reunion. Harry shared stories of Hogwarts, human magic, and his new friends. The forest creatures, in turn, updated him on developments within their territories, new births, seasonal migrations, shifting alliances. Yet beneath the surface of these exchanges, Harry sensed an undercurrent of concern. The centaurs seemed particularly troubled, exchanging significant glances during his tales of the troll incident and the Quidditch match interference. "Something darkens the future," Firenze said finally, when their formal council concluded and smaller conversations began. The Palomino centaur had always been most willing to speak directly with Harry about divination matters. "The stars show disruption, ancient patterns breaking." "At Hogwarts?" Harry asked, thinking of the third-floor corridor and its mysterious contents. "Beyond it. Throughout the forest. Throughout the world." Firenze looked skyward, though the daylight obscured the stars he referenced. "Mars grows brighter each night. War approaches." Before Harry could press for clarification, Bane interrupted, clearly displeased with Firenze's openness. "We do not interpret the heavens for humans, even this one." "He is forest-born," Firenze countered mildly. "The coming darkness threatens his world as much as ours." Bane snorted and moved away, but the exchange left Harry uneasy. Something was wrong, something beyond the mysterious events at Hogwarts. He resolved to pay closer attention during his holiday visits. That resolution proved prescient the very next day. While exploring the western reaches of the forest with Mortem, Harry encountered a disturbing sight, a dead unicorn, its silvery blue blood staining the snow around it. "This is wrong," Harry whispered, kneeling beside the magnificent creature. "Unnatural." Unicorns rarely died of natural causes, their powerful magic sustaining them through most injuries and illnesses. This one showed signs of a violent attack, deep wounds on its neck and flank. "Something hunted it," Mortem observed grimly. Something desperate and dangerous. Harry extended his magical senses, trying to detect any residue of the attacker. A faint signature remained, dark, fractured, eerily familiar. "This magic," he said slowly, "it feels like the fragment in my scar." Mortem's head snapped toward him. "You're certain?" "Not identical, but similar." Harry touched his forehead, where the lightning bolt scar tingled faintly. "Broken soul magic. What would attack a unicorn?" "Only one seeking to extend a half-life," Mortem replied, his voice more grave than Harry had ever heard it. "Unicorn blood can sustain existence even when one is inches from death, but at terrible cost. The moment the blood touches the attacker's lips, they live a cursed life." Harry stared at the dead unicorn, horror dawning. "Voldemort. He's not completely gone. He's here, in the forest. Or his servant is," Mortem agreed. "Either way, the forest is no longer safe as it once was." They reported the unicorn's death to the centaurs, who already knew. The herd had felt the loss of one of their own, though they hadn't located the body yet. Megorian organized search parties to track the attacker, while Amalthea led the remaining unicorns deeper into protected territories. Over the following days, Harry divided his time between joyful reunions with various forest families and increasingly urgent investigations into the unicorn killer. No further deaths occurred, but signs of an intruder persisted, strange tracks that disappeared abruptly, magical disruptions in usually stable areas, forest creatures reporting glimpses of a shadowy figure. The grim situation didn't prevent Harry from experiencing some holiday joy, however. The forest creatures, having learned about human Christmas traditions from Harry's stories, prepared their own version of the celebration. On Christmas Eve, they gathered again at the Heart Tree, which the Dryads had decorated with glowing fungi, crystal ice formations, and strands of unicorn hair that shimmered with their own light. Beneath the tree lay gifts, not wrapped in paper, but presented in the forest tradition, openly, with the giver's magic evident in each creation. From the centaurs, Harry received a star chart unlike any in the Hogwarts library, a three-dimensional crystal that showed celestial movements spanning centuries, with particular configurations highlighted in gold. "For guidance in dark times," Megorian explained. "When you cannot see the stars directly, this will show their positions and meanings." The Acromantulas presented him with a cloak woven from their finest silk, lightweight yet stronger than any human-made armor and resistant to most minor curses. "Our children remember how you saved them from the forest fire 2 summers past," Aragog's mate explained. "This offers protection in return." From the unicorns came a small vial containing 3 freely given hairs from Amalthea's mane. For healing beyond wizard medicine, the unicorn's thoughts touched his mind. When true purity is needed. The goblins contributed a silver knife with runes etched along its blade. "Neither wand nor creature magic affects its edge," they told him proudly. "It cuts through enchantment as easily as flesh." Smaller gifts followed, a flute carved by wood nymphs that could calm even the most aggressive creatures, seeds from plants that grew nowhere outside the forbidden forest, a small stone that glowed with comforting light on the darkest nights. Harry accepted each with genuine gratitude, humbled by the care and thought behind every offering. In return, he had brought simpler gifts from the human world, rare herbs for the centaur's stargazing rituals, specially mixed feeds for magical creatures that Hagrid had helped him prepare, crystallized honey from honeydukes that even Acromantulas enjoyed. The celebration continued into the night, with music, stories, and magical displays from each species. For hours, the darker concerns about unicorn killers and approaching conflicts faded into the background. Harry felt truly at home for the first time since leaving for Hogwarts, connected to the wild magic that had shaped his early years. When he finally returned to the castle well past midnight, with Dumbledore's special permission, he found one more surprise waiting, a small pile of presents at the foot of his bed in the empty Gryffindor dormitory. From Hagrid, a roughly carved wooden flute. From Ron, a box of chocolate frogs. From Hermione, a luxury quill set. Even Mrs. Weasley, Ron's mother, had sent a hand-knitted sweater and homemade fudge after hearing about Harry from her sons. The final package contained something extraordinary, a fluid, silvery gray cloak that seemed woven from water and light. When Harry tried it on, his body disappeared completely. An invisibility cloak, incredibly rare and valuable in the wizarding world. A small note accompanied it, written in narrow, looping handwriting, "Your father left this in my possession before he died. It is time it was returned to you. Use it well. A very Merry Christmas to you." No signature identified the sender, but Harry suspected Dumbledore. This connection to his father, a tangible inheritance beyond his vault contents or physical resemblance, felt particularly meaningful after his forest celebration. Harry slept that night with the cloak folded carefully beside his bed, his dreams filled with images of his parents walking through the forest beside him, invisible to others but clear to his sight. The remaining holiday days passed quickly. Harry divided his time between forest explorations, research in the unusually empty library, and occasional snowball fights with Ron and the remaining Weasleys. The invisibility cloak proved useful for nighttime wanderings through the castle, allowing Harry to explore areas normally off-limits to students. During one such excursion, he discovered a remarkable mirror in an unused classroom, an ornate gold frame standing on two clawed feet, with an inscription carved around the top, "Eris stra eru oit ube kafru oit on wosi." When Harry stood before it, the mirror showed not his reflection alone, but a crowd of people surrounding him, his parents immediately behind him, smiling and waving, and beyond them, fantastic creatures from the forest standing alongside witches and wizards. A united family, both human and non-human, together without conflict or separation. The vision captivated Harry so completely that he returned the following night, and would have continued visiting if not for Dumbledore's unexpected appearance during his third visit. "Back again, Harry?" the headmaster asked gently, materializing beside him despite the invisibility cloak. "I didn't see you, sir," Harry said, quickly removing the cloak. "Strange how nearsighted being invisible can make you," Dumbledore remarked, sitting on a desk near the mirror. "So, you, like hundreds before you, have discovered the delights of the mirror of Erist." Erist, desire, Harry realized, finally deciphering the backward inscription. "It shows what we want." "Yes and no," said Dumbledore. "It shows us nothing more or less than the deepest, most desperate desire of our hearts. You, who have never known your human family, see them standing around you. You, who bridge two worlds, see them united rather than separate." Harry nodded slowly. "It's not real, though." "A perceptive observation," Dumbledore said approvingly. "Men have wasted away before it, entranced by what they have seen, or been driven mad, not knowing if what it shows is real or even possible." "Will it be moved soon?" Harry asked, somehow knowing the mirror wouldn't remain accessible. "Yes. And I ask you not to go looking for it again. It does not do to dwell on dreams and forget to live, Harry." Dumbledore rose from the desk. "However, before it goes, I'm curious, what do you see when you look into it?" Harry hesitated only briefly before answering truthfully. "My parents, standing with me. And behind them, all the forest creatures who raised me. Everyone together, without conflict. Without having to choose between worlds." Dumbledore's expression softened. "A noble desire, Harry. Integration rather than division. Connection rather than isolation. What do you see, sir?" Harry asked, curious despite himself. I see myself holding a pair of thick, woolen socks," Dumbledore replied with a slight smile. "One can never have enough socks. Another Christmas has come and gone and I didn't get a single pair. People will insist on giving me books." Harry sensed the deflection but didn't press. Everyone had secrets, even headmasters. As the holiday break concluded, Harry spent one final full day in the forest, visiting each of his foster families to bid them farewell until his next opportunity to return. The unicorn killer hadn't struck again, but tension remained high among the forest dwellers. "Be vigilant at the castle," Megorian cautioned during their parting. "The darkness spreading here has connections to the human world. The stars show conflict approaching rapidly. I'll be careful, Harry promised. And I'll return at the first opportunity. Mortem accompanied him to the forest edge as dusk fell, providing one last flight above the snow-covered trees before Harry needed to return to the castle. The forest will always be your home, little shadow, the Thestral said as they landed. But perhaps it's time to acknowledge that your destiny extends beyond our boundaries. Harry nodded, feeling the truth of these words. I belong to both worlds now. And perhaps, Mortem added, that dual belonging is exactly what both worlds need. With that cryptic statement, the Thestral watched Harry walk across the snowy grounds toward Hogwarts' illuminated windows, where Ron and human friendship awaited. Term resumed with a flurry of activity. Hermione returned from her holiday with renewed determination to identify Nicholas Flamel, dragging Harry and Ron to the library at every opportunity. I know I've read about him somewhere, she insisted, poring over massive tomes during their free periods. It's driving me mad. Their breakthrough came unexpectedly during a rare indoor break, when wet weather had driven them from the grounds. Harry unwrapped a chocolate frog and found Dumbledore's card, the first one he'd ever received. I've got Dumbledore again, he said, turning the card over to read the back. Suddenly, he gasped. Flamel. Listen to this. Dumbledore is particularly famous for his defeat of the dark wizard Grindelwald in 1945, for the discovery of the 12 uses of dragon's blood, and his work on alchemy with his partner, Nicholas Flamel. Hermione leapt to her feet with such excitement that several nearby students stared. Stay there, she whispered urgently, dashing to the dormitories. She returned minutes later with an enormous old book. I checked this out of the library weeks ago for a bit of light reading. Light, said Ron incredulously, but Hermione hushed him. Flipping frantically through the pages, she finally found what she was looking for. Here it is. Nicholas Flamel is the only known maker of the Philosopher's Stone. The what? Said Harry and Ron together. Oh, honestly, don't you two read? Look, she pushed the book toward them, pointing to a passage that explained how the Philosopher's Stone could transform any metal into pure gold and produce the elixir of life, which made the drinker immortal. That's what Fluffy's guarding. Harry realized. That's what moved from Gringotts to Hogwarts. And why someone would risk breaking into both places to steal it, Hermione added. Imagine, endless wealth and immortality. Or imagine if Voldemort got hold of it, Harry said quietly, thinking of the dead unicorn. If he's already desperate enough to kill unicorns for their blood. The implications hung heavily between them. If Voldemort, or whoever served him, obtained the Philosopher's Stone, he could return to full power. The threat would no longer be limited to mysterious attacks in the Forbidden Forest but would extend throughout the wizarding world. We need to tell someone, Hermione insisted. Dumbledore should know that someone's after the stone. He does know, Harry replied with certainty. That's why it's here instead of at Gringotts. That's why there are multiple protections beyond Fluffy. Dumbledore's waiting. Waiting for what? Ron asked. For whoever's trying to steal it to make their move, Harry explained. Think about it, if someone like Voldemort wants the stone, better to confront him here, under controlled circumstances, than let him find another way to return. That's mental. Ron exclaimed. Using a school full of kids as bait? Not bait, Harry corrected. A controlled environment. The safest place in Britain, with Dumbledore present. And remember, no one's actually supposed to be able to reach the stone through all those protections. Their discussion continued over the following weeks, interspersed with increasing homework demands as professors began preparing students for end-of-year exams. Harry found himself stretched thin between academic requirements, continued forest visits, now limited to weekends with Hagrid's supervision, and vigilant monitoring of the developing stone situation. Adding to his concerns, his scar began burning with increasing frequency, particularly during defense against the dark arts classes. The pain came in sharp, unexpected bursts, sometimes so intense that Harry had to excuse himself from lessons. Perhaps you should see Madame Pomfrey, Hermione suggested after one such episode. Curse scars are serious business. But Harry knew the school nurse couldn't help with this particular problem. The pain connected somehow to the fragment of Voldemort embedded in his scar, the broken soul magic the unicorns had sensed years ago. As winter reluctantly yielded to spring, Harry's suspicions crystallized around Professor Quirrell. The defense teacher's stuttering, fearful demeanor had initially seemed genuine, but Harry began noticing inconsistencies, moments when the stammer disappeared, fleeting expressions of calculation rather than fear, and most tellingly, magical disturbances around him that matched the signature Harry had detected near the dead unicorn. "I think it's Quirrell, not Snape," he told Ron and Hermione one evening in the common room. "The stutter's an act. There's something wrong with his magic, fractured, like it's not entirely his." But Snape was threatening him in the forest. Ron countered, referring to a confrontation they'd witnessed during a particularly ill-advised expedition into the Forbidden Forest. "We heard him demanding to know how far Quirrell had gotten." "Maybe Snape suspects him too," Harry suggested. "Maybe he's trying to prevent Quirrell from reaching the stone." Hermione looked thoughtful. "It would explain why Snape referees Quidditch matches now, to prevent any more incidents like what happened to McGregor." "Exactly," Harry agreed. "We've been looking at this backward." Despite their suspicions, they had no concrete proof. Harry considered approaching Dumbledore directly but hesitated, sensing the headmaster already knew more than he revealed. Instead, Harry increased his own vigilance, spending evenings beneath his invisibility cloak near the third-floor corridor, watching for suspicious activity. During one such night watch in late April, he witnessed Quirrell entering the forbidden corridor, muttering to himself, or rather, Harry realized with a chill, to someone else. The defense professor's voice alternated between his usual stutter and a higher, colder tone that made Harry's scar flare with pain. "Master, I see can't get past the dog, use the music, fool," came the cold voice, seemingly from Quirrell himself. "All beasts succumb to its influence. But as Snape suspects, Snape is irrelevant. The stone must be obtained before the school year ends." Harry retreated silently, heart pounding. The evidence was incontrovertible. Quirrell served Voldemort, who somehow maintained a connection to the defense professor. Whether possessed, controlled, or willingly serving, Quirrell represented a direct threat not just to the stone but to everyone at Hogwarts. The next morning, Harry sent Hedwig with urgent messages, one to Hagrid requesting a meeting, another deeper into the forest to Megorian and the Centaur Council. If conflict approached as rapidly as the stars suggested, preparations needed to begin immediately. Hagrid, unsurprisingly, inadvertently confirmed Harry's worst fears during their meeting. "Yeah, say Quirrell mentioned music and the dog," the gamekeeper repeated nervously. "Well, I might have mentioned to him that Fluffy falls asleep to music. Didn't think much of it, lots of the teachers know about the protections since they helped set him up." "What other protections are there?" Harry asked urgently. "Beyond Fluffy?" Hagrid frowned. "I shouldn't ha' told ya that much already. It's top secret." "Hagrid, please," Harry pressed. "If someone's trying to steal the stone, if Voldemort is involved, we need to know what they're facing." The name made Hagrid flinch, but Harry's serious expression convinced him. "Well, let's see, there's Fluffy, oh, course. Then some Professor Sprout's plants, Devil's Snare, if I remember right. Professor Flitwick charmed some keys, and McGonagall transfigured some chess pieces. Then Quirrell's contribution," he stopped, looking troubled. "Quirrell provided a protection for something he's trying to steal?" Hermione asked skeptically. "Well, all the teachers did, didn't they?" Hagrid replied defensively. "Snape too. And then Dumbledore's own enchantment at the end. So Quirrell needs to get past defenses created by nearly every Hogwarts professor, including himself and Dumbledore," Harry summarized. "No wonder he's been moving cautiously." "But that's just it," Hagrid insisted. "Ya can't get past all those enchantments." "That's the point." Harry wasn't so certain. If Quirrell served Voldemort, perhaps the most powerful dark wizard in history, conventional protections might not be sufficient. The Centaur's response arrived that evening via Hedwig, a small scroll containing just 5 words, "The darkness moves this night." Harry immediately sought out Ron and Hermione in the common room. "Something's happening tonight," he told them quietly. "The Centaur's divination never fails when it's this specific." "What do we do?" Hermione whispered anxiously. "Tell a professor." "Which one?" Ron countered. "If Harry's right and it's Quirrell, we can't trust him. Snape's hardly better. McGonagall would demand evidence we don't have. We need to guard the corridor ourselves," Harry decided. "At least until we can get word to Dumbledore." "But Dumbledore left this morning," Hermione reminded them. "Remember? Called to the Ministry of Magic for some emergency." Harry's heart sank. The timing couldn't be coincidental. Then it's definitely happening tonight. Quirrell arranged for Dumbledore to be called away. They formulated a hasty plan. Immediately after curfew, they would use Harry's invisibility cloak to reach the third-floor corridor. If Quirrell appeared, they would either stop him themselves or find Professor McGonagall, depending on the situation. The plan derailed almost immediately when they encountered Neville in the common room, determined to prevent them from breaking rules and losing Gryffindor more points after a recent incident. "I won't let you," he said, raising his fists. I'll fight you." "Neville," Harry said seriously, "this isn't about house points. Someone's trying to steal something that could help Voldemort return. Actual lives are at stake." Neville's brave stance faltered. "V. Voldemort? But he's gone." "Not entirely," Harry replied grimly. "And if he gets what's hidden at Hogwarts, he could come back fully. Is that what you want?" The round-faced boy looked terrified but still shook his head stubbornly. "Why not tell the professors then?" "We don't have time to explain," Hermione said apologetically, then raised her wand. "Petrificus totalis." Neville's arms snapped to his sides, his legs sprang together, and his body went rigid, toppling to the floor like a statue. "I'm really, really sorry, Neville," Hermione whispered as they stepped over him and donned the invisibility cloak. "We'll make it up to you." Beneath the cloak, they navigated the dark corridors carefully, avoiding patrolling prefects and Filch's cat, Mrs. Norris. When they finally reached the third-floor corridor, they discovered the door already ajar, and harp-strings still vibrating beside a snoring 3-headed dog. "Quirrell's already gone through," Harry whispered, pulling off the invisibility cloak. "We're too late to stop him." "We should go back," Hermione urged. "Get Professor McGonagall." "There's no time," Harry insisted. "By the time we convince her, explain everything, and return, Quirrell could have the stone." Ron looked pale but determined. "So we follow him?" Harry nodded grimly. "We follow him." The next hours tested everything Harry had learned, both from the forest and from Hogwarts. Each professor's protection required different skills to overcome. Past Fluffy, they encountered Professor Sprout's Devil's Snare, which Hermione defeated with conjured fire after Harry identified the species and its weaknesses. Flitwick's flying keys required Harry's natural flying ability on an old broomstick. McGonagall's giant wizard's chess set demanded Ron's strategic thinking, though at significant personal cost. He sacrificed himself to the White Queen, allowing Harry and Hermione to continue while he lay unconscious but alive. "You go on," Hermione told Harry after they confronted Quirrell's protection, a logic puzzle involving potions and a wall of fire. "I'll go back, help Ron, and send for Dumbledore somehow." The final chamber contained not Quirrell alone, but Quirrell standing before the mirror of Eriste, and in that mirror, Harry glimpsed his parents once more, along with something new, his father slipping a blood-red stone into his pocket, which simultaneously appeared in Harry's actual pocket. "Potter," Quirrell said without turning, his voice steady and cold without any trace of a stutter. "I wondered if you'd join us." "Us?" Harry replied, though he already knew the answer. "Oh yes," said Quirrell, finally turning to reveal a face transformed by hatred and ambition. My master is always with me. What followed tested not just Harry's magical abilities but his very understanding of life and death. Quirrell unwrapped his turban to reveal a terrible face on the back of his head, flat and snake-like, with glaring red eyes and slits for nostrils. Voldemort himself, existing as a parasite on Quirrell's body, had been hiding at Hogwarts all year. See what I have become. The face whispered. Mere shadow and vapor. I have form only when I can share another's body, but there have always been those willing to let me into their hearts and minds. Unicorn blood has strengthened me, these past weeks, and once I have the elixir of life, I will be able to create a body of my own. The forest creatures know what you've done, Harry said, his voice steadier than he felt. They hunt you even now. Voldemort's lipless mouth twisted into a smile. Your forest pets cannot help you here, boy. Now, give me the stone in your pocket. Harry felt a jolt of surprise that Voldemort knew about the stone's location, but his forest training had prepared him for such moments of crisis. Rather than panicking or denying, he engaged the dark wizard directly. Why did you try to kill me as a baby? He asked, buying time while assessing his options. Why murder my parents? Your father died first, trying to fight me, Voldemort said dismissively. Your mother needn't have died, she was trying to protect you, but I am not unreasonable. I offered her a choice. A choice? Harry repeated, his heart pounding. To stand aside or die with you. She chose death. Voldemort's red eyes gleamed. Such foolish sentiment, but then, she could not have known that you would survive, that you would carry a piece of me within you from that night forward. Harry's hand went instinctively to his scar. You know about that? I have felt it all year, Voldemort hissed. The connection between us. The fragment of my soul that lives within you. Why do you think your scar burns in my presence? The confirmation of what the forest creatures had suspected years ago hit Harry with physical force. The broken soul magic in his scar was literally a piece of Voldemort, a connection that linked them beyond ordinary magic. Enough talk, Voldemort commanded. Quirrell, seize him and take the stone. As Quirrell lunged forward, Harry acted on pure instinct, not the trained dueling reflexes of a wizard, but the survival instincts of a forest creature. He dodged with preternatural speed, then counterattacked not with a spell but with direct physical contact, grabbing Quirrell's arm. Immediately, searing pain spread through Quirrell's body wherever Harry touched him. His skin blistered and burned as if contact with Harry was unbearable agony. Arg! Quirrell pulled away, looking at his blistering hand in shock and pain. Master, I cannot touch him, it burns me. Then kill him, fool, and take the stone from his body. Voldemort screamed. But Harry, understanding now that his touch caused Quirrell pain, pressed his advantage. He leapt forward, grabbing Quirrell's face with both hands. Though the pain in his scar threatened to split his head open, Harry held on grimly, watching as Quirrell's face blistered beneath his palms. Quirrell's screams, Voldemort's yells, and Harry's own determination blended into a cacophony of pain and struggle. As darkness began to overtake him, Harry felt something extraordinary, not just his mother's protection working through him, but the combined magic of the forest flowing through his veins. The centaur's astronomy, the unicorn's purity, the Thestral's connection to death, all merged with his wizard heritage in this moment of crisis. Just before losing consciousness completely, Harry sensed something unexpected, a presence at the edges of his awareness, familiar yet different. The forest itself had answered his need, extending its protection beyond physical boundaries. Then the world went dark. Harry awoke to find himself in the hospital wing, Dumbledore seated beside his bed. The headmaster's blue eyes twinkled with relief when Harry opened his eyes. "Good afternoon, Harry," he said gently. Harry blinked, memories flooding back. "Sir. The stone. Quirrell. Voldemort. Calm yourself, dear boy," Dumbledore soothed. "Quirrell does not have the stone." "Then who does?" "No one. Nicholas Flamel and I have agreed it's best destroyed. Destroyed? Harry repeated, trying to process this. But won't Flamel die? He has enough elixir to set his affairs in order, then yes, he will die. Dumbledore smiled slightly at Harry's concerned expression. To one as young as you, I'm sure it seems incredible, but to Nicholas and Perenelle, it really is like going to bed after a very, very long day. Harry nodded slowly, understanding. The forest had taught him that death was not to be feared but respected as part of the natural cycle. What happened to Voldemort? He left Quirrell to die and fled. Without a body or the stone, he remains weak, a mere shadow of his former self. But he is not gone, Harry. I know, Harry said quietly, touching his scar. He's still out there. And part of him is in here. Dumbledore's eyebrows rose. You know about that connection? The forest creatures sensed it years ago. The unicorns called it, broken soul magic, something dark attached to me that didn't belong. For perhaps the first time since Harry had met him, Dumbledore appeared genuinely surprised. The unicorns identified a Horcrux without naming it. Most extraordinary. A Horcrux? Harry repeated, unfamiliar with the term. A piece of soul, deliberately split through the darkest magic, Dumbledore explained carefully. Though in your case, I believe the transfer was accidental, an unintended consequence of the killing curse rebounding. Harry absorbed this information with the calm acceptance that often surprised adults. Can it be removed? Perhaps, Dumbledore said cautiously. Though not without great risk and extensive research. For now, while it creates a connection to Voldemort, it also provides us with valuable insight into his activities. They discussed other aspects of the confrontation, how Harry's mother's love had protected him, why Quirrell couldn't touch him, and what had happened to the stone. Harry also learned that Ron and Hermione were safe, having been rescued by Dumbledore, who had realized midway to London that he'd been lured away from the school. How long have I been unconscious? Harry asked finally. 3 days, Dumbledore replied. Your friends will be relieved to see you awake. They've been most persistent in their visits. And the forest? Harry asked. Did they know what happened? Dumbledore's eyes twinkled again. Most curious thing, a Thestral was spotted near the astronomy tower the night of your confrontation with Quirrell. By the time anyone investigated, it had vanished. Quite unusual for them to approach the castle so closely. Harry smiled, understanding immediately. Mortem had sensed his danger and come as close as possible to the human structure. The presence he'd felt before losing consciousness hadn't been imagination. The forest always knows when its children are in danger, he said simply. After Dumbledore departed, Madame Pomfrey allowed Ron and Hermione to visit briefly. They rushed to his bedside, faces alight with relief. Harry! You're awake. We were so worried. Dumbledore was frantic when he found you. They exchanged stories, Ron and Hermione's escape from the Devil's Snare, Dumbledore's dramatic arrival, and the aftermath of Harry's confrontation with Quirrell. The entire school had been buzzing with rumors, each more outlandish than the last. What really happened to the stone? Ron asked eagerly. Destroyed, Harry replied. Flamel agreed it was too dangerous to exist. But that means he'll die. Hermione gasped. Harry shrugged slightly. He's ready. After 600 years, maybe death seems like the next great adventure. His friends exchanged glances, slightly unnerved by his calm acceptance of mortality, another reminder of his unusual upbringing. Oh. Hermione suddenly remembered. Someone else came to see you while you were unconscious. Came right to the window somehow, even though we're 3 floors up. A Thestral? Harry guessed. Ron shuddered. Creepy things. Hermione couldn't see it at all, but I could. Like a skeletal horse with wings. Mortem, Harry said with certainty. My oldest friend and guardian. Madame Pomfrey nearly had a fit, Hermione continued. Said she'd never seen a magical creature so determined to check on a patient. Professor Dumbledore had to intervene and allow it a brief visit. Harry smiled at the image, proper, medical-minded Madame Pomfrey confronted with a determined Thestral in her hospital wing. The end-of-year feast arrived the following evening, and despite Madame Pomfrey's protests, Harry insisted on attending. The Great Hall was decked in Slytherin colors of green and silver to celebrate their 7th consecutive House Cup victory. When Harry entered, conversation stopped briefly before erupting into even louder chatter. He ignored the stares and whispers, taking his seat between Ron and Hermione at the Gryffindor table. Dumbledore arrived moments later, and the babble died away. "Another year gone," the headmaster said cheerfully. "And what a year it has been. Hopefully your heads are all a little fuller than they were. You have the whole summer ahead to get them nice and empty before next year starts." He proceeded with the House Cup announcement, confirming Slytherin's substantial lead in points. But then, with a twinkle in his eye, Dumbledore added, "However, recent events must be taken into account." What followed delighted most of the hall and horrified the Slytherins. Last-minute points awarded to Ron for the best-played game of chess Hogwarts has seen in many years, to Hermione for the use of cool logic in the face of fire, and to Harry for pure nerve and outstanding courage. These additions tied Gryffindor with Slytherin for the House Cup. Dumbledore surveyed the hall thoughtfully. "There are many kinds of courage," he said quietly. "It takes bravery to stand up to our enemies, but just as much to stand up to our friends. I therefore award 10 points to Mr. Neville Longbottom." The Great Hall exploded with cheers as Neville, white with shock, disappeared under a pile of people hugging him. Gryffindor had won the House Cup for the first time in 7 years. As the celebration continued around him, Harry found himself surprisingly detached from the house rivalries that meant so much to his classmates. The Forest had taught him to value cooperation over competition, shared survival over arbitrary victories. While he appreciated Dumbledore's recognition of their actions, the points themselves seemed trivial compared to what they'd actually accomplished, preventing Voldemort's return, at least temporarily. His gaze drifted toward the high windows of the Great Hall, beyond which lay the Forbidden Forest. Soon he would return there, at least briefly, before facing another challenge, summer with the Dursleys. Dumbledore had insisted on this arrangement for protective reasons, though he promised Harry could spend the latter portion of summer either with Ron's family or back in the forest. The end-of-term results arrived with few surprises. Despite his uneven approach to academics, Harry passed with good marks, outstanding in practical subjects, acceptable in others. Hermione, of course, achieved the best grades of the first years. Even Neville scraped through, his good herbology mark compensating for his poor potions performance. Before they knew it, their trunks were packed, notes warning students not to use magic over the holidays were distributed, and Hagrid was leading them to the fleet of boats that would carry first years back across the lake. As the train pulled away from Hogsmeade Station, Harry gazed out the window at the receding castle and the dark line of the Forbidden Forest beyond it. "You'll write this summer, won't you?" Hermione asked anxiously. "Both of you?" "Every week," Ron promised, then added with a grin, "Harry might need rescuing from those muggles if they're as bad as he says." "They won't keep me long," Harry said confidently. 2 weeks with them for the blood protection, then either to your place, Ron, or back to the forest. I'll have Hedwig, so I can stay in touch regardless." As the journey continued, Harry found himself reflecting on the extraordinary year. He had arrived at Hogwarts as an oddity, the wild child raised by magical creatures, disconnected from human society. Now he departed with something he hadn't expected, genuine human friendships, connections that complemented rather than replaced his forest family. Perhaps Mortem had been right. Perhaps his unique position bridging both worlds wasn't a disadvantage but his greatest strength, the ability to draw wisdom from different traditions, to see patterns others missed, to connect what others perceived as separate. The train began to slow as they approached King's Cross Station. Harry changed from his wizard robes into his forest-crafted leather garments, much to the amusement of his friends. "That'll give your aunt and uncle a shock," Ron laughed. "That's partly the point," Harry admitted with a grin. They should understand from the start that I'm not what they expect. As they disembarked onto platform 9 3/4, Harry caught sight of the Weasleys waiting to collect Ron and his brothers. Mrs. Weasley spotted him and waved enthusiastically. "There he is, Mom, there he is!" Ron's younger sister exclaimed, pointing at Harry. "Harry Potter. Look!" "Ginny, be quiet," Mrs. Weasley scolded. "It's rude to point." After warm goodbyes with the Weasleys and a crushing hug from Hermione, Harry approached the barrier back to the Muggle world. Uncle Vernon waited beyond it, looking furious about having to enter a station full of their kind. But before passing through the barrier, Harry paused, looking back at the magical platform, at Ron and Hermione waving, at the scarlet steam engine that would return him to Hogwarts in September, at the wizarding world that represented half his heritage. For the first time in his life, Harry Potter felt truly whole, neither solely the forest's child nor just a wizard, but a bridge between worlds. Whatever challenges lay ahead, he would face them with the wild wisdom of the forest and the learned knowledge of wizards combined in ways neither tradition fully understood. With a final wave to his friends, Harry stepped through the barrier, ready to navigate the next phase of his extraordinary journey. The end. Thank you for watching this video. Please be sure to subscribe to our channel and like this video.